A word of warning: when you're in Australia, never stick your finger into these holes. They might be home to burrowing spiders. Some species have a bite powerful enough to pierce nails. It feels similar to a hammer on your finger because of the venom. So always give your boots and outdoor clothes a quick check to be safe. Animals sometimes make homes or look for food in them, especially bandicoots. Silk-lined burrows in shady spots might belong to funnel web spiders. The silk works as a trip line to alert the spider inside about what's happening outside. Look for shiny dark brown to black spiders with finger-like spinnerets at the end of their abdomen. Then you'll find them. Males have a hefty mating spur sticking out of the middle of their second pair of legs. When these spiders feel threatened, they make aggressive moves, rearing up and showing off their startling fangs. These spiders, which belong to the Aranida order, are known for their funnel-shaped webs that widen at the entrance. They patiently wait in the narrow funnel for prey to touch the web, then swiftly capture it. In Australia, large brown spiders frighten people due to their venomous bites. They are infamous for causing people to lose their lives in southern and eastern Australia, particularly in the Sydney area since the 1920s. Quick access to the antidote after a bite is crucial in preventing severe consequences. The next spider is one of the world's most dangerous venomous spiders. Phoneutria nigriviter is a spider living in South America. People often call it the Brazilian wandering spider. You see, in Brazil, 4,000 people get bitten by this critter each year. The bites can cause serious issues, such as hypertension, blurred vision, sweating, and vomiting. You wouldn't want to meet with this creature, as you can also face way more severe consequences than blurred vision. In some situations, its kiss can take a life. Apart from messing with humans, this spider has a diverse menu, including crickets, katydids, and even larger options like tree frogs, lizards, and bats. Operating under the cover of darkness, these creatures are the most active during the night. They ambush their prey instead of relying on webs. In the daytime, they seek refuge beneath logs or in narrow crevices. They love to be around banana trees, but can be found in urban areas and inside homes too. If you spot them one day, be prepared. This creature's body is covered with thick brown hair and is not that small. In 2013, a London family had to leave their home due to an infestation of Brazilian wandering spiders. The trouble began when an egg sac, hidden in a bunch of bananas, made its way to their local grocery store. No one noticed. When the family bought the bananas, the egg sac broke open. Potentially lethal spiders spread around the house. Over 2,500 people visit poison control centers annually in the U.S. Black widows are spiders with the signature hourglass mark on their bellies. Well, let's talk about their bite. These creatures have a bad reputation because their venom is supposedly 15 times stronger than what rattlesnakes pack. When they bite humans, the bite causes muscle aches and nausea. The venom can even mess with breathing by paralyzing the diaphragm. Despite these cases, most people who get bitten don't end up with serious issues unless they're elderly or very young. These sneaky creatures don't pick just one spot to hang out. You can find them in wood piles, burrows, or among plants that act as scaffolding for their webs. Black widows are especially dangerous for other insects and their mates. After a not-so-romantic mating dance, ladies sometimes go all Hannibal Lecter on their mates. These spiders are architects too, spinning massive webs where females stash a cocoon loaded with hundreds of eggs. Baby spiders move out once they hatch, but the web stays put. Those webs are also traps. Different kinds of prey later join the black widow's spooky snack collection. Yellow sac spiders range in size from approximately 0.12 to 0.6 inches and construct silken tubes under stones, in leaves, or in grass. They're found across the United States and southward toward Mexico and South America. They are venomous to humans and, unfortunately, are commonly spotted indoors. The venom of the yellow sac spider contains cytotoxin. This is a substance that can damage or impair cell function. Reactions like redness and swelling at the bite site are common. Yellow sac spiders are not known for their calm nature either. For instance, a female yellow sac spider may bite when protecting her eggs. These spiders usually come in different light colors. They can be a hassle for people in more than one way. Your car can be in danger too. On rare occasions, they may even set up nests in car engines. Moving on to wolf spiders. They're part of a large and widespread group found worldwide. They're named this way for their wolf-like hunting behavior of chasing and pouncing on prey. Around 125 species exist in North America, and approximately 50 live in Europe. These spiders are typically dark brown, with long, broad, hairy bodies and sturdy elongated legs. Like me. Just kidding. They're super speedy. While they usually create silk-lined tubular nests in the ground, some may conceal the entrance with debris. Others build turret-like structures. A few species also spin webs. Wolf spiders may bite in self-defense. They are venomous, but their bites are not considered dangerous. Some people who are allergic to spider bites may experience nausea, dizziness, and an elevated heart rate. The bite of the spider's large fangs is similar to a bee sting, so it can cause a physical wound at the bite site, and the venom may cause itchiness. The combination of their powerful bite, rapid movements, and startling appearance can be quite unsettling. Beware of the redback spider, a close relative of the notorious black widow. It used to live in Australia, yet it has managed to spread its web across New Zealand, Belgium, and Japan through grape exports. The distinctive red stripes or hourglass marks on their black backs are more noticeable in females. Disturb a female, and you'll see how she can defend her eggs. You're likely to get bitten. These spiders can sneak into shoes or clothing, lurking against the victim's skin while they're dressing. Both male and female redbacks have a venomous bite. Their venom is a cocktail of neurotoxins. It can cause sweating, rapid heartbeat, and swollen lymph nodes. The redback has control over the venom dose, so symptoms vary based on how much is injected. Australia deals with over 250 redback bites annually, many requiring anti-venom treatment. The latest case, when a person lost their life after being bitten, dates back to 1956. Yet it can happen, so stay vigilant and cautious around these stealthy spiders. Let's talk about the heavyweight champion of the spider world, the Theraphosis blondie, casually known as the Goliath birdeater. This giant tarantula can stretch up to 11 inches and tip the scales at 6 ounces. To put it in perspective, this spider is big enough to cover your dinner plate and is certified by the Guinness World Records. The nickname might make you picture a tarantula feasting on a hummingbird, but that's more of an artistic exaggeration dating back to the 18th century. These spiders are more into munching on arthropods and rarely go for bird snacks. Goliath bird eaters don't bother with webs like their spider buddies. Instead, they're all about silk, using it to line their cozy burrows beneath the forest floor. The spider itself looks dangerous, but its bite almost never requires a doctor's visit. It feels more like a wasp sting. Goliath bird eaters are the biggest spidey on Earth. On the other side of the spectrum, we have this guy from Colombia. They are among the tiniest spider species. Grown-up males of this species are 0.015 inches long, tinier than your average pinhead. Females are usually a bit larger. Well, that was creepy, wasn't it? Australia used to have its own giants. Those were huge animals that could have dwarfed anything living on this continent these days. Scientists found the remains of many of those ancient creatures in the Narracuta Caves in South Australia, 4 hours away from Adelaide. It's a lovely region, but it can be treacherous. Watch out for holes the ground is pocked with. Known as pitfall traps, many of them are no wider than a coffee table. They're deep and plunge into the darkest of caverns. One of such caverns is called Victoria Fossil Cave, and it's a treasury that's been hiding the bones of around 45,000 animals for centuries. Some of the oldest bones belong to creatures far more terrifying than any animal you can encounter today. Those were the ancient Australian megafauna, huge beasts that roamed the continent during the Pleistocene epoch. During those, there were giant snakes, huge flightless birds, wombat-like creatures the size of a rhinoceros, and many others. One of the largest examples of the Australian megafauna scientists have discovered so far is the Diprotodon. That giant herbivorous creature was 10 feet long and 6.5 feet tall, and weighed more than 6,000 pounds, about as much as a small Asian elephant. Even though this terrifying beast didn't eat meat, it could have smashed other animals with its sheer weight. Scientists have found the remains of hundreds of such creatures all over Australia, so it's safe to say that no other animal from that time or in that location was larger than this giant. Despite its creepy appearance, the Diprotodon was a relative to the modern-day wombat, and those are known to sometimes pounce humans. The Diprotodon had toes that pointed inward and were well suited for digging burrows. On the other hand, Diprotodon was a giant, and it was unlikely that it used to do so. It was likely a trait it had inherited from its smaller burrowing ancestors, or it could have used its claws to search for roots. This theory is supported by the fact that the animal's pouch was facing backward. It prevented any dirt from collecting inside while the creature was digging. Since this animal was so big, it didn't have to worry much about predators. Up until 60,000 years ago, when the first humans appeared on the continent, full-grown Diprotodons only had to look out for creatures like the Quinkana. Measuring in at a whopping 20 feet long, the Quinkana was a land crocodile. It lived in Australia from around 20 million to 40,000 years ago. It disappeared along with most other mega creatures of the last ice age. It's thought to be the result of the first humans coming to the continent. Even though the Quinkana was extremely fast and dangerous, it was possible that this creature got outcompeted by human hunters who took all available prey. Unlike modern crocodiles that are mainly aquatic, that mighty beast was a land dweller. Scientists figured it out by studying the Quinkana's legs. They were able to support and carry the body clear off the ground. It means there was no escape for ancient people once the Quinkana spotted them. Modern crocodiles can only push themselves along on their bellies. Such an adaptation allowed the Quinkana to chase its prey for long periods of time, exhausting it in the process. Another creepy feature of this ancient monster was its teeth. Aquatic crocs have conical teeth. Those are great for gripping and holding on to prey underwater. But Quinkana had knife-like teeth, ideal for slicing soft-bodied animals like, mammals. Another Australian monster, Thylacoleo, wasn't all that large, but it didn't make it any less terrifying. It was still among the top predators and the biggest carnivorous animals in Australia. This creature was a true oddity of nature, even by prehistoric standards. First, its teeth resembled not those of a regular predator, but those of a rodent. Its front incisors were enlarged, taking the place of canines. Premolars were also shaped like blades. They were used for cutting flesh and bone. At first, scientists thought that Thylacoleo used those teeth to eat nuts and fruits. But later, a study showed that the use of such teeth was better suited on necks and spines. The jaws of this ancient creature were immensely powerful. A 220-pound Thylacoleo had a bite force similar to that of a present-day 550-pound lion. It means that the animal could easily bring down prey much larger than itself. Then there was Thylacoleo's tail. It had strong muscles which provided the animal with the ability to use the tail as support when tackling large prey. The Thylacoleo had retractable claws, and this feature is very uncommon among marsupials. It allowed the animal to keep its razor-sharp hooks from getting blunt and could help it get a better grip on its prey. Scientists are quite sure that, like today's leopards, the Thylacoleo could climb trees and jump on other animals from above. It was done so fast and stealthily, they never knew what hit them. The creature's rear feet support this theory. The first toe there was reduced, but the foot had a rough pad like what modern-day possums have. It allowed them to have a better grip while climbing. Right after scientists found the first skull of the Megalania, this animal was classified as a lizard. That's why its name translates to small groomer. But after they discovered more complete fossils, it turned out that the Megalania was a giant turtle. But that's not all. It was one of the largest land turtles to ever have existed. The main reason researchers initially believed the creature to be a lizard was the fact that its skull was adorned with a series of spikes. It's something the modern-day horned lizard can boast. But even after discovering the true nature of the Miolania, scientists still don't know how to properly catalog it. It might have been a creature that folded its neck under its spine, or it could have folded it to the side. Beside those defensive mechanisms on its head, the Megalania was also equipped with a spiked tail, which was probably used to prevent predators from attacking the animal from behind. Most species of the Miolania disappeared around 2,000 to 3,000 years ago because of humans who hunted them to extinction in both Australia and on the surrounding islands. It took around 2 centuries for these turtles to go extinct in that region of the globe. The Megalania was a giant Australian lizard that existed at the end of the Pleistocene epoch. It looked like a Komodo dragon and the Australian monitor lizard, which are both believed to be Megalania's closest living relatives. Fossils tell us that the ancient animal was anywhere from 15 to 26 feet in length. Ow! The youngest fossil remains of this ancient Australian monitor lizard date back to about 50,000 years ago. The first indigenous settlers must have encountered Megalania, which led to the lizard's extinction. Originally, scientists thought that the Megalania was the only member of the genus Megalania, but these days it belongs to the genus Venomous, which means that the prehistoric creature is closely related to other Australian monitor lizards. Our next giant creature on our list was once dubbed an ostrich on steroids. I mean, look at it. It was the last of the thunderbirds to go extinct in Australia. The Genyornis lived on the continent at the same time as early humans. They might have coexisted for 15,000 years or so before the huge bird eventually disappeared. This theory has some proof. The bird's fossils found along with human artifacts. Some cave paintings also depict flightless birds similar to the Genyornis in size and shape. Although it wasn't the largest bird in Australia, the goose-like creature was still as tall as a grown-up man and weighed around 550 pounds. Even a modern-day ostrich can be dangerous if it feels threatened. Imagine meeting its giant prehistoric relative. Scientists are still arguing about its diet. Many believe the creature was an herbivore, but there's still a chance that the Genyornis was a partial scavenger. Its small, stubby wings and powerful hoof-like legs hint that the bird could have been a plant eater. But its huge beak and exceptionally deep lower jaw evoke suspicion. Such features are highly unusual in birds. Who or what do you think is the most effective hunter on Earth? It's not lions, sharks, eagles, or wolves. Sharp teeth, a loud roar, huge claws, and a terrifying appearance do not automatically make an animal a good hunter. The primary indicator of a beast's effectiveness lies in its ability to successfully catch prey. For example, lions manage to catch their dinner in only 1 out of 4 attempts, while sharks succeed in their attacks only half of the time. Wolves and eagles have to exert considerable effort to secure their meals. However, there is one creature that consistently achieves success in its hunts: the dragonfly. More than 90% of its attempts to catch prey are successful. If dragonflies were the size of giant griffins, they would undoubtedly dominate the top of our planet's food chain. By the way, these insects were even larger in the distant past, but we will discuss that later. For now, let's delve into what makes dragonflies so effective. One of the main factors contributing to their successful hunting is their speed and maneuverability. Dragonflies possess some of the most efficient wings in the world. They can hover in the air, change direction within seconds, come to a stop, fly backward, and even maneuver in circles. In contrast, consider birds, which take approximately a second or more to take off. Their flight may be graceful, but it lacks maneuverability. Birds are unable to stop quickly or change direction with ease. Their movements are smooth and limited. In contrast, dragonflies have 4 wings, 2 in the front and 2 in the back, and these wings can move independently of one another. With just 3 wing strokes, dragonflies can reach a speed of 30 miles per hour, equivalent to the average speed of cars driving in a city. Additionally, dragonflies have a short braking distance. If an ordinary car were to stop at this speed, it would skid several feet on the road. In contrast, a dragonfly can come to an abrupt stop at any moment, with an almost negligible braking distance. With this remarkable ability, dragonflies swoop up, dive down, and perform 360-degree spins, rendering them elusive hunters from which nothing can escape. Well, 10% do. Nevertheless, effective wings alone are insufficient if they're not complemented by a well-functioning brain. Almost all insects rely on their sense of smell and touch during hunting. Take, for instance, a spider sitting on its web. It detects any contact with the delicate threads and determines the prey's location through vibrations. Dragonflies, on the other hand, primarily rely on their exceptional eyesight. They can focus on a target just like humans, completely disregarding external distractions. Imagine yourself in a large room with numerous televisions hanging on the walls, each displaying a different movie. Amidst the chaos, you spot your favorite comedy and can concentrate on it, ignoring the sounds and images on the other TVs. A dragonfly possesses a similar ability. If it observes a swarm of buzzing mosquitoes flying in various directions, it can focus on a single mosquito and track its movements. The mosquito will be unable to camouflage itself within the crowd of its companions. Uh-oh. A dragonfly's motor flight center resides in its chest. Similar to bone marrow, this center receives signals from the brain and transmits them to the limbs. Additionally, a dragonfly's brain is connected to its thorax. When the insect focuses on a target, 16 neurons form a chain through which the signals travel from the brain to the wings. This rapid communication guides the wings in flight, ensuring they can capture their intended target. The dragonfly gazes at the mosquito, then calculates the trajectory of interception. If something goes wrong, the dragonfly can adjust the wing movements during flight. Its eyes occupy most of its head, consisting of thousands of small lenses. They can see almost 360 degrees around them, and some species have a vision range of about 40 feet. It may not seem like a long distance, but when compared to a human, it showcases excellent eyesight for its small size. Additionally, some dragonflies possess ultraviolet vision. They can clearly perceive their surroundings and maintain focus on the target, preserving the angle of view during flights. Even if they encounter wind or the target changes its position, a dragonfly maintains the same angle on the prey while adapting its wings to a new flight route. All these abilities enable these insects to catch prey in 95% of hunting cases. They prey on mosquitoes, moths, butterflies, flies, and even other dragonflies. Their legs are strong and prickly, allowing them to grip their prey tightly. However, possessing these advantages does not make them the primary predators in the wild. Dragonflies can become prey for toads, birds, fish, and even turtles. As they mainly fly over swamps, ponds, and lakes, they are not always able to spot a predator swimming up from the depths. They can easily become dinner for birds during flight or get caught in a spider's web. Nonetheless, they would have fewer enemies if they were as big as they were 300 million years ago. Before dinosaurs roamed Earth, bugs with a wingspan of about 2.5 feet soared through the air. They were known as griffin flies, resembling dragonflies the size of crows. A pack of such monsters could easily disrupt your barbecue party. I think we're going to need a bigger swatter. During prehistoric times, the atmosphere contained 9% more oxygen. Insects absorbed it through specialized breathing tubes, which functioned as an alternative to lungs. The high oxygen saturation supported their growth over millions of years. However, their substantial weight prevented them from maneuvering and flying as swiftly as insects do today. Griffin flies were clumsy flying insects. Around 150 million years ago, I wasn't around then, insects started to decrease in size. Interestingly, the oxygen levels in the atmosphere remained unchanged. Something influenced the growth of bugs, and scientists are confident that those began to shrink when large prehistoric birds appeared. Giant dragonflies became easy prey in the sky, prompting evolution to reduce their size for increased maneuverability. They became smaller, but their flying skills improved significantly. Now let's examine another insect with exceptional flying abilities, the common housefly. This annoying bug buzzes around your room, disrupting your sleep. You want to swat it with a slipper or a newspaper, but it's challenging because the fly's attention and reaction speed are several times better than yours. Imagine two acrobats, one performing daring stunts and flips in the gym, and the other does it underwater. The underwater acrobat moves much more slowly, with predictable and seemingly heavy movements compared to the one in the gym. You resemble the underwater acrobat when dealing with the annoying bug. Though you may attempt a swift strike, for the fly, your hand moves as fast as a balloon falling to the ground. And the fly sees better than you, thanks to thousands of receptors that capture the light around it. You strain your muscles and move your eyes to see something to the side. But the fly doesn't have to do that. It sees everything at once. If you think you've sneaked up on a fly unnoticed, you're mistaken. It sees you and is ready for any attack. Similar to a dragonfly, a fly can change its speed and direction, slow down, and accelerate. It can also calculate the trajectory of your hand. When you wave a newspaper to swat it, the fly calculates the point of impact and its body immediately prepares for an evasive maneuver. In a way, it can dodge the attack even before you strike. Imagine if flies and dragonflies were to increase in size while maintaining their speed and reaction. Humanity would face, shall we say, significant problems. And do you know why a fly loves you so much? Because your body is like a vast clearing with free food. You secrete sweat, which contains a variety of delicious treats, proteins, salts, carbohydrates, and many chemicals. The fly consumes all of it and, at the same time, doesn't perceive any threat from the outside. Sure, there's a giant slowly waving big hands, but is that a reason to abandon the feast? Of course not.
Today, I'm going to tell you about creatures that had unique features which allowed them to grow to incredible sizes. They were some of the most impressive animals to have ever existed on our planet. The Argentinosaurus is a genus of sauropod dinosaurs that lived approximately 97 million years ago in what is now South America. Scientists think it was one of the largest land animals ever, with a length of up to 100 feet and a weight of up to 100 tons. A farmer stumbled upon a giant leg bone while tending his cattle. That's how he discovered the first fossils of the Argentinosaurus in Argentina in 1987. Further excavations uncovered more bones, revealing a massive dinosaur that would have dwarfed most other animals of its time. The Spinosaurus, meaning spine lizard, is a genus of theropod dinosaur that lived around 97 million years ago in what is now North Africa. It is believed to be one of the largest carnivorous dinosaurs to ever exist, with a length of up to 60 feet and a weight of up to 23 tons. The Spinosaurus is known for its distinctive elongated sail-like structure on its back. It was likely used for thermoregulation. It also had long crocodile-like jaws that were lined with sharp teeth. This allowed the creature to catch and eat large prey, such as fish, crocodiles, and other dinosaurs. The first fossils of the Spinosaurus were discovered in Egypt in 1912. The sperm whale, Physeter macrocephalus, is a species of toothed whale that is the largest toothed predator on Earth. It also has the largest brain of any animal species. It is found in oceans all over the world and can dive to depths of up to 7,000 feet in search of food. You can easily recognize sperm whales by their massive, block-shaped heads, which can measure up to 1/3 of their total body length. They have dark brown or grayish-blue skin and a distinctive wrinkled appearance. The Titanoboa is an extinct genus of a giant snake that lived approximately 58 million years ago. It is considered to be the largest known snake ever. It could grow up to 42 feet and weighed around 2,500 pounds. The first fossils of the Titanoboa were discovered in a coal mine in Colombia in 2004. This discovery meant a lot because it provided insights into the size and behavior of snakes during the Paleocene era, as well as the overall climate and ecosystem of the time. The blue whale, Balænoptera musculus, is the largest animal on Earth, measuring up to 100 feet in length and weighing as much as 200 tons. These marine mammals are found in oceans all over the world and can live up to 90 years. Blue whales have a long, streamlined body that is usually blue-gray in color with mottled patterns. They have a small dorsal fin and 2 pectoral fins that are about 1/3 the length of their body. Blue whales feed on tiny shrimp-like creatures called krill, and they eat a lot. A single adult blue whale can eat up to 8,000 pounds of krill in a day. The Leadsichthus is an extinct genus of large, bony fish that lived during the Jurassic period, approximately 155 million years ago. It is believed to be one of the largest fish that have ever lived. Some estimates suggest that it could grow up to 55 feet in length. The first fossils of Leadsichthus were discovered in England in the 19th century, and more recent discoveries have been made in other parts of Europe, South America, and Africa. Despite its enormous size, the Leadsichthus was a filter feeder, similar to modern-day whale sharks, and likely fed on plankton and other small organisms. The creature did it by simply swimming with its enormous mouth open, filtering water through its gills. The Pterodaustro is an extinct species of flamingo-like birds that lived approximately 35 million years ago. They were relatively small birds with a wingspan of about 2-3 feet. And they were known for their distinctive long, narrow beaks equipped with comb-like structures used for filter feeding. The Pterodaustro lived in shallow bodies of water, like lakes and lagoons, and mostly fed on small crustaceans and other tiny organisms. The animal filtered them from the water using the comb-like structures on the inside of its beak while swimming through the water. The African elephant is the largest land animal on Earth and one of the most recognizable ones. There are two species of the African elephant, the savanna elephant, Loxodonta africana, and the forest elephant, Loxodonta cyclotis. You can see them in various parts of sub-Saharan Africa. These creatures can be identified by their large size, gray skin, and long trunks. African elephants can grow up to 13 feet tall and weigh up to 14,000 pounds, depending on the species and gender.
A mega drought might hit Australia soon, and this isn't just about a couple of dry seasons. We're talking about 20 years of little or no rain. While Australia could be facing the longest and most devastating drought since official records began, the rest of the world might struggle to buy bread, flour, or cereals. Energy prices are likely to spike globally, and neighboring countries like New Zealand, Indonesia, and Malaysia must be prepared to receive Australians directly affected by the lack of water. To truly understand how severe this situation could become, we should first examine past disasters. First off, Australia is no stranger to droughts, and this phenomenon can happen across their entire territory. From 2017 to 2019, the southeast part of the country went through what they called the tinderbox drought. This was a severe bone-dry event where the cooler months saw only about half the usual rainfall. Parts of Australia became so dry that wildfires were a constant threat. Crops failed, and water was scarce. This drought was also thought to have contributed to the Black Summer fire disaster. By the end of 2019, bushfires were raging across the country on a scale never seen before, with people describing them as rivers of lava flowing down from treetops. The losses were staggering. The tourist industry alone took a hit of $2.8 billion, and over 7,000 jobs disappeared as a result of this difficult period. The tinderbox drought was a big reminder of what Australia might face in the future. That's why it's so important to understand what happened in the past to get a full picture of a possible 20-year mega drought. But there is one problem. Even though droughts are relatively common in Australia, the rainfall data available until today isn't enough for researchers to predict the future, and our records only go back to around 1900. So experts decided to study tree rings to uncover missing environmental data. If you look at a tree stump, you'll notice concentric rings on its surface. As trees grow, they form new rings, and the thickness of these rings depends on how much water they get. During a megadrought, the rings appear thinner because the trees don't have much water. Unfortunately, these natural records usually only go back a few hundred years, and it only tells us about specific local conditions, not the situation across all of Australia. So, experts turn to computer models to simulate how Earth's climate changed from the year 850 to 2000. This approach helped them to paint a picture of when megadroughts might have occurred in Australia and how to predict what might happen in the future. But what they were really interested in was whether the human factor might be making this scenario worse over the years and if we are somehow intensifying these dry periods. So, Are we to blame for these mega droughts? The short answer is, we're not sure yet. On one hand, dry periods in Australia do seem to last longer than they did before factories and machines became common. On the other hand, they don't seem to be getting more intense or happening more often than before industrial times. This means a drought lasting 20 years might not be directly linked to human activities. Actually, this kind of phenomenon is just a normal part of how rainfall changes in Australia over time. This is backed up by evidence from ice cores, which suggests that a 39-year drought hit eastern Australia around 800 years ago. What makes it all so fascinating is that there isn't just one cause for this phenomenon. I mean, there is no single mechanism that explains all cases of megadroughts. It happens because the right combination of ocean and atmospheric conditions come together, and you end up with a drought. And just by random chance, you might have periods where there are 100-year-long droughts. Despite what many people think, megadroughts are not geographically isolated. They have occurred on every continent except Antarctica over the past 2,000 years, and are often linked to natural events. For instance, megadroughts in North America and Southwest South America were driven by El Niño, where the Pacific Ocean near the equator gets warmer than usual, disturbing normal weather patterns. They are not rare events either. In fact, the U.S. Southwest has been experiencing a megadrought since 2000. It's being considered the driest period in 1,200 years for the region. Major reservoirs like Lake Mead and Lake Powell are at low levels. Heat waves are hitting cities like Phoenix and Las Vegas harder than ever, and wildfires are happening more frequently as the land gets drier. Now, let's think about the future. Even though we have a very recent and concrete example from the U.S., research can't exactly predict how a 20-year megadrought would play out in Australia. Usually, such events show up mainly as reduced rainfall and snowfall. But in most areas, the increase in drought risk will be caused by a warmer, more arid atmosphere. So the ground will probably look parched and cracked, rivers and lakes will likely shrink, and the sky will be relentlessly clear and blue, with barely a cloud in sight. Farmers might struggle to grow crops, making grocery prices rise worldwide. Things like bread, flour, and cereals may become scarcer, as Australia supplies about 13% of global wheat exports. Coal mines might be affected, as they depend on water for extraction, washing, and processing. That might drive up power costs for industries around the world, which could be passed on to consumers, impacting global growth and inflation. As cities might face water shortages, Australians will likely find new ways to conserve every drop or maybe move to New Zealand or Southeast Asia. Now, you're probably thinking, when is this big event going to happen? Honestly, it's really hard to predict exactly. Megadroughts can happen every 150 to 1,000 years, but experts think Australia should be ready for one to happen in the next 10 years or so. And this possibly should be taken seriously. This phenomenon has been known to contribute to the collapse of entire civilizations. Take the Akkadians of Mesopotamia, who built the world's first empire more than 4,000 years ago. Studies of moisture at the ruins of Akkadian cities suggest that they experienced a massive drought lasting 300 years, and this may have led to their collapse. A similar thing happened to the Assyrian Empire, which existed over 2,700 years ago, in what is now northern Iraq. For years, it was a real mystery why they left their capital of Nineveh and never returned. But recent studies of a stalagmite in the Quinkana cave revealed that the rise and fall of the empire coincided with a wet period followed by a 125-year-long mega-drought. Because they were very dependent on seasonal rain for agriculture, this dry period made their life much harder. Even though experts now believe they probably left because of the dryness, the question of where they went is still a mystery. So, yep, mega-droughts may have played a role in the collapse of great civilizations in the past. But on the positive side, we've come a long way since then, and recent climate technologies can help us prepare for events like this. Now that we know a 20-year megadrought is very much possible and might happen soon, Australia has some time to get ready for it. Developing strong water management plans to mitigate the severe impacts of a mega drought is more than necessary. And it's also important to create community support networks to provide emotional and financial support to people, particularly farmers, who are more affected directly by this event. If initiatives like these emerge in the coming years, those 20 years of drought could be less intense than most people might expect.
Let's go with the widely accepted theory that a massive asteroid hitting our planet wiped out the dinosaurs. It does make you wonder why mammals made it though. One idea is that mammals were better prepared. Back then, they weren't the most popular creatures on Earth, but they were pretty diverse. They bred themselves into a huge range of species, and it might have saved them. Some said mammals survived because they were smaller, so they needed fewer resources. As they had to constantly hide from dinosaurs, they managed to survive in difficult environments, way before the hit. But let's say the asteroid never came, and it never damaged the environment the dinosaurs thrived in. It's safe to say our fauna would look different today. Take the mighty Titanosaur. It's considered the biggest land animal to ever exist, some reaching lengths of about 7 standard cars lined up. It had a neck so long that it would have needed a 2-story home just to fit. It also had a plant-based diet, so it ate from the ground, but from very tall trees too. There was nothing much left to eat for, say, the little Jeremiah, a mammal that lived roughly at the same time, but was as small as a popsicle stick. Let's take this thought experiment a bit further and imagine we have a time machine that could transport today's mammals to the time of the dinosaurs. Some scientists say they have gotten bigger, so there's a chance they could survive, right? They're also much more evolved in terms of their diets and skills. Others say definitely not, they couldn't survive, mostly because they're too small to compete with dinosaurs. An adult T-Rex was just about the size of a bus. It probably wouldn't waste its time trying to capture food that's human size, for instance. They'd probably be on the lookout for prey the size of a car, or even bigger, like an elephant. And it most likely wouldn't take them long to win the fight. Sure, a T-Rex might munch on something smaller too, but only if it's really hungry and has no other alternative. If we had no choice but to send some mammals back in hopes they could survive, what would be our best bet? Some say the chimpanzee could be a good candidate, as these primates build their sleeping nests higher up in trees. This might have kept them safe from the carnivore dinosaurs living on land. There's no real evidence of dinosaurs being able to fly, but we do know there might have been some reptiles that took to the sky for transportation, like pterosaurs, the flying lizard. These ones like to eat fish and smaller animals, but who's to say they wouldn't pick up a chimpanzee given the opportunity? Another good candidate might be the hyena. Today, the spotted hyena is the most common big carnivore in Africa, and it's highly adaptable. They could snatch up all sorts of prey by themselves or even in larger units. They can digest most parts of their prey, including the skin and bones. These animals aren't picky eaters, and they wouldn't mind chewing on parts that other creatures would gladly skip on. Not to mention, they'll eat fruits too, if needed. Hyenas are overall healthy and sturdy animals, with some studies showing they hardly ever get health problems. But like any other animal on this planet, the hyenas also have their weaknesses. We still don't know why these creatures can't be found in Europe anymore. But some research suggests they found it hard to coexist with humans and wolves. Also, they're not very adapted to living in forests. Orcas might have been able to rub elbows with the dinosaurs too. These creatures also don't have any natural predators, which earned them the nickname the wolves of the sea. That's because they go out looking for prey the same way wolves do, in groups. Orcas may be related to dolphins, but we can hardly call them friendly, as there have been cases of them sinking ships on purpose. They're highly intelligent animals that spend time together and are very organized. They also do this thing where they often take down more prey than they're prepared to eat. It may be because they see this experience as training. Other theories suggest orcas are so intelligent that they look for food in advance, even though they're not hungry yet. It might also be because whenever they want something to munch on, they're looking for the best quality food there is. The reason why they might not survive in the dinosaur era, though, is the global temperature. Back in the Mesozoic era, our planet was seriously hotter, several degrees warmer than it is today. Orcas prefer living in colder waters, but you'll find them in all oceans and most seas. Ostriches are the no-brainer answer. Look at them. They're practically dinosaurs. They even have a long-lost dino cousin that lived in the Cretaceous era, called the Struthiomimus. Its name translates to ostrich-like because of its similar powerful and speedy legs, agility, and even feathers. On the downside, they might not be able to take down larger dinosaurs. The vegetation back in the Mesozoic era would have been different too. Conifers used to dominate land, and ostriches are known to be pretty picky eaters, so they might have had a difficult time finding food back then. There are plenty of reasons to send felines through that time machine too. In the Jurassic period, for example, there were plenty of slow-moving prey to eat and tons of hiding spots in the thick bushes. Felines are sneaky animals, have precise vision, and are extremely good at climbing. Some pack a punch for their size, making them fierce fighters. Lions are good contenders because of their speed and teamwork. They might be able to take down some decent-sized dinosaurs, like the Europasaurus, when working together. Leopards are really good at climbing trees, so they could snatch prey and enjoy it above the ground, where they might be safe from bigger predators. What might be their downfall is again the temperature difference. It was considerably hotter back then. Today's large mammals aren't equipped to deal with that extreme heat. Lions might be the kings of the savannah now, but it would be too hot even for them. If they ever want to grab a spiky-tailed herbivore for lunch like the Tugiangosaurus or Stegosaurus, they might be in for a surprise. One hit from their extremely powerful tail could cause some serious damage. Not to mention run-ins with raptors, like the frightening Saurophaganix. The single most likely animal that might survive being roommates with the dinosaurs is the platypus. This quirky Aussie creature is one of those rare egg-laying mammals. It's a fan of freshwater and as close to a living relic as an animal can be. Scientists were able to trace its origin back as far as 120 million years ago. For food, it wields its sensitive beak to catch shrimp and worms underwater. When it dives, skin flaps cover its eyes and ears, so it becomes blind and deaf. But it still uses that beak like a high-tech radar. A grown platypus can even feast on half its body weight in a single night. Scientists have known for a while it shares many traits with reptiles, like its shoulder bones or the fact that it lays eggs. Other creatures that coexisted with the dinosaurs still exist today, just not mammals. Snakes made their way into our fauna in those prehistoric times too, as well as cockroaches and bees. Some species of sharks are even considered to predate the dinosaurs. And if we look at our entire planetary history, we'll see they survived 4 out of 5 periods of mass extinction. Horseshoe crabs have the nickname living fossils because their evolution was much slower than any other animal that we know of. Not because they're not smart, but simply because they found their perfect form much sooner, so they didn't need to make a lot of changes. They have a very rudimentary immune system, but it seems to work wonders. No wonder they stayed pretty much the same for over 400 million years.
You're going to Ilha de Queimada Grande, one of the most dangerous islands in the world. There, you find yourself among rainforests, huge rocks, and grasslands. The place is home to birds, locusts, and giant cockroaches. But there's one more animal, and because of it, the island got its notorious reputation. Snakes live there, and a lot of them. So many that the place is also known as Snake Island. Will you survive there? Located just 20 miles away from the coast of Brazil, the island has an area of 43 hectares, or over 100 acres. It probably got cut off from the mainland after the last ice age. The snakes were also separated from most other animal species. They didn't have competitors and had an unlimited source of food. In such a small area, there are up to 4,000 snakes. That's one snake for every 10 square feet. It would be a difficult feat not to come across a snake on this island. Not only is this snake, the golden lancehead, one of the most numerous on the island, but it's also a highly venomous pit viper species. And it's also one of the most venomous in all of Latin America. Its venom is so potent due to the isolation of the species, with only birds sharing the land with them. To catch these birds, the snake's venom needed to become extra strong. And indeed, since they got separated from their distant relatives, their venom has become up to 5 times more powerful. Most of the time, these snakes hide in the trees or amongst leaves on the ground. If you find yourself stranded here, you'll want to keep yourself a safe distance away. Snakes mainly use their sense of smell and rely on vibrations. If you get too close to one, either stand still or slowly walk away. If you make too many vibrations, this will make them feel threatened, causing them to strike. If you spot them a safe distance away, or if you're walking toward tall grass, stamp your feet a couple of times. This will notify snakes of your presence. They won't risk taking down prey larger than they are and will likely slither away. Carrying a stick is always a good idea, just in case you happen to come across a snake accidentally. This way, you'll have an extension of your arm that cannot be bitten. This simple thing might save your life. A stick with a V shape on the end will give you even more advantage. Even if a snake starts acting aggressively, holding it down will stop it in its tracks. But whatever happens, don't try to pick it up. Okay, but what if you get bitten? The chances are pretty high on this island, of course. First of all, don't try to get the venom out on your own. Make sure you call emergency services immediately. And once help is on the way, apply a wide bandage. A piece of clothing will do if you don't have anything else. Don't try to chase the snake trying to identify the species. Emergency services know how to figure out what venom it is. Now, just keep calm and wait for help. You might be wondering who you can call on this abandoned island. Well, since it's strictly prohibited to visit this place, there are signs advising to stay away all over the island, along with a number you can call if you run into trouble. Let's say you've successfully avoided getting bitten. The next thing to consider is what you can eat there. Snake Island was previously known as Ilha de Queimada Grande, where queimada is Portuguese for forest being lit up, or forest fire. The reason for that was the fact that the entire island was deliberately set on fire to make room for a banana plantation. Unfortunately, the banana business didn't turn out to be a success, probably because farmers got sick and tired of snakes. But some banana trees still thrive today, and they can provide you with some much-needed nutrients. You'll also want some protein in your diet throughout your stay. Luckily, along with the snakes trapped on the island, there are also cockroaches. These giant prehistoric-looking roaches come out at night to feed on plants. Get that barbecue started and enjoy the rare delicacy this island provides. A great way to survive on the island is to avoid it altogether. If by chance you happen to be sailing past, keep in mind that this place was once connected to the mainland. Rocks beneath the waves are very likely to damage the bottom of your boat if you get too close. Make sure you keep an appropriate distance when traveling past. Sure, this island is intriguing, but please remember that no matter how close you get to it, you won't be able to see snakes from the boat. You can only see these creatures if you get close enough, which you really shouldn't do. And it's not only reptiles that make this location dangerous. Pirates visit the island quite often. Not the sea shanty singing peg-legged arr pirates, but bio-pirates who come there to capture the very thing that makes it so dangerous. They come there for snakes, to catch them and sell them illegally. Since the island got cut off around 11,000 years ago, the golden lancehead has evolved within its own unique habitat. So, although there are many reptiles on this island, they're still an endangered species. Due to their limited numbers, their value is very high, reaching up to $30,000 on illegal markets, which gives biopirates the motivation to catch them. I can think of better ways to make a living. Anyway, let's say you've got all the resources necessary to survive in one of the most dangerous places on Earth. Do you think you would manage this feat? Perhaps you think it's impossible. You'd be surprised at how possible it can be, if you know what you're doing. It turns out many have visited this scary place before. Research teams often come there. They study the golden lancehead snake, its environment, and its food sources for conservation purposes. But scientists always make sure there's a doctor on the team. There's also a lighthouse on Snake Island. It had been operated by people until the 1920s. Then it became automated. One guess why. Brazilian authorities visit the lighthouse once a year to make sure it's still functional. Locals on the mainland know the reputation of the island, so the stories of people going missing are minimal. But one group of fishers once got too close to the island. As they were sailing along their normal route, they accidentally neared the shore. Their boat hit a rock under the waves and began filling with water. As the boat was quickly sinking, the men had only two options: to try to survive in the rough sea or swim to the shores of Snake Island. It was a hard choice to make. After all, they had heard the stories, and it wasn't just about snakes. Rumor had it that the island was cursed. Regardless of the stories, the fishers chose to take their chances with Snake Island. After making it to the shore, they tried to be careful. Their knowledge of the island could help them survive. Most importantly, they knew to avoid the rainforest at all costs. As the men got hungry, they carefully walked along the edge of the forest, warily collecting bananas. They were mostly sitting, waiting, and conserving their energy. They could only drink water when it rained. It was just enough to sustain them. They slept on the beach, unprotected from the elements and weather. And all the time, they were so close to the comfort of the lighthouse or caves. They were probably overly cautious, but it was either enduring some discomfort or risking their lives for a dry bed. They didn't yield to the temptation. They managed to survive for 3 days without being bitten by a snake. After that, a passing boat finally rescued them. So, now you know, anything is possible.
Psst, run! Really, it's not safe out there. There's a saber-toothed tiger lurking around. You better be careful. What are you doing? Don't peek. Okay, just one little peek. How's this possible, you ask? That's because you're in virtual reality, of course. These cool but very dangerous-looking big cats were alive during the last ice age. What if they decided to show up at your doorstep out of nowhere? Knock knock, a saber-toothed tiger is waiting for you to buy its cookies. Meanwhile, the coelacanth, this massive-looking fish, comes from a lineage that's been around for over 300 million years. We thought they didn't exist anymore until 1938, that is, when a live coelacanth was found again. Since then, they've been roaming the waters of the east coast of Africa and the waters of Sulawesi, Indonesia. Man, I wouldn't want to go for a swim and meet one of these fellas face to face. Their jaw has an intercranial joint, which means their mouth opens up by a lot. This is so they can eat large prey, like me. Not good. They're huge too. Imagine a fish that's as long as you're tall and weighing as much as an average human. The takahe, a flightless bird, was thought to be gone in the year 1898. They're very cute, small and multicolored, usually not taller than your knee. But picture this. You're out for a hike in the Murchison Mountains. Looking around, you spot the bird you thought was extinct. But there they are, as happy as ever, surviving and chilling. Whole colonies of takahes was indeed found just 50 years after they were pronounced extinct. Good job, tiny little birds. A singing dog. Ever heard of those? Riley does sing sometimes when he's bored or hungry, but these are real performers. New Guinea singing dogs. They've been only recently discovered again in the wild for the first time in 50 years. Still, they were never completely extinct to begin with. New Guineans made sure they were safe next to them. But in the wild? Very rare and hard to catch a sight of. Look, there goes one. The New Guinea singing dogs are called so because of their famous high-pitched singing. They sometimes sing together too, a dog choir of sorts where they all howl together. I bet they sing better than I do in the shower. Not going far from this area, we have bats, but these ones are sort of different. You see, their ears are enormous. I guess that's why they're called the New Guinea big-eared bats. Clever. The species was found again when one of them was accidentally caught in a bat trap. Until then, I guess they were playing hide-and-seek with us, because up till 1890, they had been thought to be gone. They're still not out of the danger zone because of habitat loss. Imagine you discover a fossil of a species you thought had been extinct for a long time, yet 2 years later, a whole living group of said species is found. Well, this is exactly what happened in 1977 with the Majorcan midwife toad. It's sort of brownish in color with darker brown that makes up its skin spots. Other than that, it's just a small toad with googly eyes. The group of live toads was found close to where the fossil was, on the island of Majorca. There aren't many of them left, about 500 in fact, and as of right now, they're declared vulnerable by the International Union for Conservation of Nature. Now, are you a fan of tortoises? You will be when you take a look at this huge beauty. It's called the Ferdinanda Island Galapagos tortoise. It hasn't been seen since 1906. But on February 17, 2019, we were finally able to look at one of these beautiful creatures. It's probably out there with a few of its mates right now, but they also don't allow themselves to be seen. We only know they exist because there's a few tracks and scents. With yet another frog, we have the horned marsupial frog. They're out and about in Ecuador, in the Chocó forest to be more specific. They're called this way because of their distinctive horns directly on top of their eyes. You know the pouch kangaroos use to carry their offspring? Well, the female horned marsupial frog also has that, except it's on the back, so it acts as sort of a backpack. They develop their embryos there, and when they're ready to come out, they hatch as complete infants, unlike regular frogs where they start out as tadpoles. One more toad, the starry night toad or harlequin toad. They're black and covered with loads of white spots all over them. Lost for 30 years, it was discovered back in 2019. Picture them as big bodyguards, water bodyguards to be exact. Oh, that's a very big toad on your screen. Well, for the Arhuaco people, that's exactly what they are, guardians of water. They also have their own name for them, Guna. Sounds like a cheese. When scientists found them yet again, they came across 30 of these little creatures, but initially, they were expecting only one. Well, what a nice surprise. Here's a tiger for you, although it doesn't quite look like your typical tiger. It's called the Tasmanian tiger, and it seemingly disappeared since 1936. But then, out of nowhere, people started seeing them out there in the wild just 5 years ago in 2016. They sort of resemble dogs more than tigers, or a fox maybe. Just take a look at its muzzle. Maybe even a mix of both. Then, a few others started popping up too. And if you happen to think you're seeing one right in front of you, but you're not quite sure, check if they've got stripes on their back. They're definitely out there, but still technically marked as extinct by the IUCN. Okay, picture a horse that looks straight out of a movie scene. Tiny, gorgeous fur, very well behaved. It's tiny, but it's not a pony. It's a Caspian horse. They have an interesting backstory to them. They were discovered by Louise Leyland, who got married to an aristocrat in 1957. Having moved to Tehran, Iran, she didn't quite like how the horses behaved there, so she took matters into her own hands. She took a few people with her, and off they went to the Caspian Sea mountain. And in there, they found 3 of these beautiful tiny little horses. Well, that's how the story goes. Coming up next, a possum that was found in an unexpected place. Guess where? You have 3 options to pick from: hiding in a ski resort, in the Australian outback, or in someone's apartment in the bathroom. Which one do you choose? You have 3 seconds. The right answer is a ski resort. Yes, this possum is called the mountain pygmy possum, and it's originating from Australia. So far, there are 3 different living populations of this tiny possum, but it was believed to be extinct until just 1966. There are fewer than 100 of them, so the IUCN has marked them as critically endangered. Also from Australia is the night parrot, an absolute delight to birdwatchers. Very beautiful, yet mysterious. These little fellas live in very remote areas. You can probably count on the fingers of your hand how many times these birds have been seen since they were found again in 1979. That's how rare they are. Have you ever seen a pygmy tarsier? Neither have I. It was only in 2008 that 3 of them were caught. Scientists don't really want to lose track of their movements again, so what they did was gift them with tiny little collars. This way they can live their life as happy as ever and will know they're safe. The last one I want to tell you about is the tree lobster, but as the name might mistakenly tell you, they're not really lobsters. They're just big black bugs with huge legs. Their extinction story is a sad one. In 1920, a cargo ship got stuck on Lord Howe Island, and it had rats aboard. These rats fled the ship and ran straight to land. Even though tree lobsters are bigger than most insects, they're still relatively small compared to rats. The poor things never stood a chance. Still, in 2004, life shone again for these distinct critters. A pair of Australian scientists were out and about on the island and came across 24 of them. All of them were living beneath one single shrub. Hey, if there's enough space for everyone, it's not small, it's cozy. Bottom line, it's better to be distinct than extinct. Don't you agree?
Suppose everyone in the world wants to do this, and countries started investing billions of dollars in this project. In that case, we can colonize the ocean floor. The question is, why would we need this? For the same reason we're going to colonize Mars, to save Earth from overpopulation. Why do we need to move to the red planet in the near future if we can live underwater? It'll be cheaper, safer, and most importantly, not far from our home. You don't need to stay in cryocapsules for years to wake up hundreds of millions of miles away from your planet. It's much easier to take an elevator down to the underwater city, hang out there, and enjoy the views of marine nature. Besides, staying on Mars will surely cause severe mental problems for people. Panic, stress, and the realization that you can't return to your home whenever you want can put serious pressure on your mind. It's better to live under millions of tons of salt water, and the reason why we have to do this is a need for more resources. There are about 8 billion people on Earth right now. Some experts think that when the number reaches 10 billion, the world will begin to run out of food, fresh water, and fuel. Agriculture and other industries simply won't be able to develop so quickly. Resources will be depleted, and people will have to do something to survive. The colonization of the ocean is an ideal solution to the problem. Firstly, we have very little information about the ocean. We've studied space much better than the ocean on our planet. Most likely, vast reserves of fuel are hidden under the seabed. Secondly, we will be able to reduce the load on our planet by about 50% if we move to live in the ocean. Thirdly, there will be no problems with logistics. Delivering food, necessary equipment, and construction materials will take hours, and if something breaks along the way, you can return to the surface and try to deliver it again. Sending things to Mars would be much more complex and expensive. Imagine that halfway there, millions of miles away from Earth, something breaks down on the spaceship with provisions. Then you'll have to wait for many years for the next delivery. But the main reason for ocean colonization is protection from disasters and natural cataclysms. Volcanic eruptions, radioactive winter, earthquakes, tornadoes, and floods. We could easily wait out any disaster underwater. Yeah, there are volcanoes on the ocean floor too, but the consequences of their eruptions are not so dramatic. The water immediately cools the lava and prevents ash from spreading. We will never experience the consequences of fire again. No burning forests and polluted air. And speaking about the air, there's a lot of oxygen in the ocean. More than half of the oxygen reserves on the planet are replenished by the sea, thanks to algae and phytoplankton. So don't worry, we'll be able to breathe deeply. The main thing is to figure out how to do it underwater. When humanity decides to take such a global step and begins to colonize the ocean, we will first have to adapt our bodies to high pressures. There's such a thing called saturation diving. Before descending into the depths, you must inhale compressed air. The nitrogen and oxygen quickly dissolve in your blood and exert pressure on your body from the inside. At the same time, the water pushes on it from the outside. In simple terms, your body is in balance and you don't feel bad. Divers use this method when exploring the seabed at great depths. Therefore, when people begin to colonize the ocean, they will dive there wearing cylinders with compressed air and an oxygen mask. The main rule is to surface slowly. You need to wait until the compressed air completely dissipates inside your body. If this isn't done and you rise to the surface, then you will feel intense pressure from the inside. Nitrogen will start acting in your veins like soda bubbles when you shake a can with the drink. After this adaptation, we will start building cities, roads, and stations that will transfer people to dry land and back. It shouldn't be too difficult because we already have the technologies needed for the underwater lifestyle. Welcome to the Aquarius Reef Base, located at the bottom of the Florida Keys Marine Reserve. This is a small laboratory where 6 people can live for 10 days. Scientists working there study coral reefs, marine plants, and fish. The lab doesn't look modern. It resembles a sunken, rusty bathyscaphe overgrown with shells and other underwater stuff. To create buildings with more beautiful designs, people will need new technologies for underwater construction. So let's imagine that global colonization has begun. Engineers use durable stainless metals and other materials capable of withstanding high pressure. With the help of freight elevators, people lower everything needed for large-scale construction to the bottom. Stations with such elevators appear in all the seas and oceans. Workers build huge underwater constructions on dry land. Then, large ships deliver them to the stations. From there, they descend to the bottom, where scuba divers and robots set these houses on the ocean floor. Every building is like a giant submarine with lots of apartments. They look ordinary from the inside, except for the underwater view from the window. To reduce waste emissions, engineers build huge capsules in every city, where garbage is destroyed by high water pressure. People try to live closer to the shore because they want to spend less time commuting. This causes severe pollution in coastal areas. Builders set up communication between the stations and land by creating vacuum tunnels with high-speed trains inside. In simple words, this is an underwater subway, only much faster than the one on dry land. From now on, people move farther from the shore to live in cleaner water. Humanity begins to make daily life in underwater cities more comfortable when the main construction is over. Scientists create filters that can quickly purify seawater. Now, everyone has a faucet that takes water directly from the ocean and turns it into fresh water. Also, constructors put in air filters capable of extracting oxygen from the water. Electricians create underwater mills to generate energy. To leave home, a person must put on a diving suit and cylinders with compressed air and exit through an airlock. People swim between buildings and talk to one another using radio communication. For faster movement, car companies produce small bathyscaphes with locked cabins and powerful propeller systems. Over time, engineers create large domes where you can walk and breathe fresh air, like on land. Global clothing brands develop fashionable diving suits and practical accessories for comfortable underwater movement. For example, you can attach a small heater to your clothes to not freeze while swimming. And you can also put on wider fins with engraved brand symbols. To make such a lifestyle as comfortable as possible, scientists and biologists create masks that work like gills and provide a person with oxygen extracted from the water. Constant exposure to high pressure changes people's physiology over time. In the water, we need to put more effort into moving. People who often leave their homes lose a lot of calories. They become slimmer and their muscles get stronger. Look at the Olympic swimming champions.
Now, almost all underwater citizens have the same developed shape. Our body temperature is falling, and evolution slowly turns us into cold-blooded creatures. A lack of sunlight makes our skin paler, and we start resembling amphibians. We learn more about deep-sea creatures such as the giant squid and other monsters. Almost every month, scientists discover new species. But at the same time, many fish species disappear because of human activity in the ocean. The extraction of natural resources from under the seabed heavily pollutes the water. To reduce the load on the planet, people decide to colonize the sky. But this is a topic for another video.
Look at this funky African crested rat. Aw, it looks so cute. Well, think again. It's got an ace up its sleeve. Poison. In fact, the only known toxic rodents in the world are these maned rats. When they're feeling cornered, they puff up their fur and show off black and white racing stripes. Right in the center of this, there are a bunch of special brown hairs with a honeycomb-like texture. These hairs aren't just for show. They're loaded with a poison so strong it could bring an elephant down. These rats use this as a chemical armor to stay safe from predators like hyenas and wild dogs. East Africa has known about the crested rat's toxic mojo for ages. In 2011, researchers discovered that rats get toxins from a certain tree. Only one crested rat in captivity was caught doing this poison ritual, and some thought it might have been a one-time thing. Yet, researchers kept observing. The team had 25 rats. They filmed them in the lab and proved that it was not a one-time thing. Even though we know they're tough, these rats apparently have soft spots. Some of them might be into monogamy and even share parenting duties. Monogamy is rare in the animal world, but these rats are doing it. That's pretty exciting. Researchers say that they need to do more research to confirm the rodent's family values. The next one on the list is the slow loris. This creature seems to be the epitome of cuteness, with its tiny size and big eyes. But these animals are not your typical cuddly pals. In fact, they're the only venomous primates on the planet. They live in the rainforests of South and Southeast Asia. You might be wondering why they're called slow lorises. When explorers first met them in the 18th century, they thought these little guys were as slow as sloths. Sure, they can stay put for hours and move slowly, but don't be fooled. They can hurry when they need to. If you look closely, you'll notice a raised bald patch on their inner upper arms. That's their brachial gland, and it secretes a seriously stinky oil. When lorises feel threatened, they lick the gland, mixing their saliva and oil to create a venomous solution. When they bite another animal, this venom gets into the enemy's bloodstream. The bite is pretty nasty. It can exterminate small animals and insects and cause serious issues even in humans. Suddenly, those big eyes don't seem so innocent. In the world of slow lorises, males fight for females. Females fight to protect their little ones. And everyone fights to defend their turf. That venom comes in handy during these showdowns too. Here, moms use their venom cleverly. Before heading out to grab some snacks, they lick their brachial glands and groom their babies. This transfers the venom to the little one's fur, acting as a warning sign for potential predators. The next animal is the sand cat. Meow. This cat species lives in the desert. Unlike other cats, they call the desert's harsh environment their home. First off, they've got the ultimate footwear for the desert runway. Thick fur on their paws, even between their toes. They also have built-in insulation against the crazy temperature swings, from 124 degrees Fahrenheit during the day to 31 degrees Fahrenheit at night. They even grow winter coats with hair up to 2 inches long. Sand cats can go weeks without drinking a single drop of water. They get all the moisture they need from the prey they munch on. When it comes to hunting, these seemingly cute sand cats unleash their inner predators. Forget the adorable kitten vibes. These guys are fierce. They're not picky eaters either, snacking on small rodents, birds, or insects. Oh, and they even go after venomous vipers. Plus, if they score more than they can munch on, they hide the extra food in the sand for a midnight snack. Their secret weapon is super sensitive hearing. They don't leave paw prints and they don't make noise when they approach their prey. Meet cone snails, sea snails with a twist. They have vibrant, colorful patterns decorating the surface of their shells. They're not just cool looking, they too pack some serious venom. Armed with a modified radula tooth and a venom gland, cone snails are the sea's skilled hunters. They use this harpoon-like tooth to launch a venomous attack on their prey, paralyzing it before eating. Speaking of venom, cone snail venoms are like a cocktail. They contain a mix of toxins with different effects. Some of the bigger cone snails can deliver a sting that's not just serious, but even fatal to humans. Yet their venom helps us with certain medical issues. The fifth cute but dangerous animal is the millipede. These critters sport two pairs of jointed legs on most of their body segments. Each of those double-legged segments consists of two single segments teaming up. Imagine a crew with elongated cylindrical or flattened bodies, usually boasting more than 20 segments. But pill millipedes are the shorter rebels in the gang. It allows them to roll into a tight ball. In 2021, a new species was discovered that had over 1,300 legs. If you dive into the millipede world, you'll find around 12,000 different species. Many of them are generally harmless to humans. But beware, some might pull pranks in your house or garden. The sixth animal is the hooded patui. It's a bird found in New Guinea. This bird stands out as one of the few known poisonous birds with toxins in its skin, feathers, and tissues. The poison comes from its diet. It serves as a defense against predators and parasites. Interestingly, its resemblance to other poisonous patuis is an example of convergent evolution, where unrelated species evolve similar traits due to similar environmental pressures. In this case, different poisonous patuis independently developed similar characteristics as a form of protection. The hooded patui has Mullerian mimicry too. It's a phenomenon where harmful or poisonous species evolve to resemble one another. In simpler terms, it's like a group of toxic friends dressing similarly so everyone knows they should be avoided. Additionally, non-poisonous species imitate the appearance of the hooded patui in a phenomenon known as Batesian mimicry. This is when harmless or less harmful species evolve to resemble a more dangerous or toxic species to gain protection from predators. In this case, other birds copy the look of the hooded patui, even though they lack the same toxic defenses. So in this case, a harmless bird dresses up in a poisonous costume to ward off potential threats. Platypuses look adorable with their thick fur and duck-like bills, but you don't want to mess with them either, especially in the late winter when male platypuses get a bit feisty. They fight for females and use vicious spurs on their feet that inject venom during the brawl. In 1801, one biologist thought the spurs were for keeping females in check during mating, but he was wrong. These creatures are more into hunting insect larvae than romance. Late winter, though, is a different story. Males fight injecting venom, and losers get paralyzed. There have been cases of these animals attacking humans. Luckily, none of them were fatal. If a platypus decides to stab you, even morphine won't ease the effects. Doctors might need to remove the spurs from your wound manually. Ouch! Watch out for pufferfish as well. They may be cute, but they're the second most poisonous vertebrates in the world. Their liver, eyes, and sometimes their skin contain tetrodotoxin. This is a substance that makes them taste awful and can be lethal to fish. This substance is also a serious threat to us. It's up to 1,200 times more poisonous than cyanide. A single pufferfish has enough toxin to take out 30 grown-ups, and there's no known antidote. Despite this danger, some people in Japan consider pufferfish meat a delicacy called fugu. trained chefs are well aware that one wrong move could result in the worst-case scenario for a customer. That's why not all chefs are allowed to prepare this dish.
You decided to go scuba diving for the first time. The water is clear and the sun is shining on the seabed. You take a few selfies and the fish swimming by when suddenly the ocean goes pitch black. You look up and, oh my, what is that gigantic animal? It's definitely not a shark, not a whale. Is it a turtle? Yup, but fear not, it's not gonna hurt you. If you had lived on this same Earth about 72 million years ago, then maybe this could have really happened to you. Scientists have recently found the fossils of a gigantic marine turtle that could have grown as big as 12 feet. If you don't have any idea of how big that is, let's see some examples. That's the average length of a hippopotamus, 6 golden retrievers, or 2 Michael Jordans stacked on top of each other. The turtle's scientific name is an homage to that old-school sea monster called Leviathan. Maybe you remember this from old-school history lessons. The Leviathan is supposedly a mythical creature that would swallow entire ships or people that were deemed too greedy by the creature. Can you imagine being swallowed by this humongous sea turtle? No, thank you. The fossils of this gigantic creature began to be excavated between 2016 and 2021, all the way in northeastern Spain. The first fossil was located by a hiker in the Spanish Pyrenees, and it was around 8 inches long. The pelvis of this turtle alone measured around 35 inches. It would definitely be one of the biggest turtles today if it hadn't gone extinct. FYI, the largest living sea turtles today can reach up to 6 feet in length, which is already pretty big. Now, how about a gigantic prehistoric scorpion? I bet most people here are not huge fans of these creatures, especially since they're poisonous, which is why the thought of a 9-foot-long aquatic scorpion might be the stuff of nightmares. Let's just say that if they hadn't gone extinct some 400 million years ago, lakes and rivers would be much more dangerous places for humans today. These gigantic insects were considered to be apex predators in their time, hunting everything from fish to other animals, even of their own kind. Yikes! I got goosebumps just imagining these creatures. Should we thank the asteroid that hit our planet now or later on in this video? Another prehistoric animal that would shock humans if it were still alive is the so-called megatherium, a gigantic sloth. This huge sloth is believed to have grown up to 20 feet long, and its weight could be up to 8,000 pounds. It was found in the woodlands and grasslands of South America. The creature used to stand on its 2 feet in order to reach leaves on high branches. These giant sloths had huge claws. They helped them climb trees. I gotta say, I feel uncomfortable imagining these elephant-sized sloths climbing trees. Oh, of course, some dinosaurs will make our super-sized creatures list. But before that, here's a fun fact. Did you know some dinosaurs are still alive today? Scientists have proven that birds are classified as theropod dinosaurs. Such infamous creatures as the T-Rex and Velociraptor belonged to this group. I'm sure you've heard these names even before you watched Jurassic Park. The Velociraptor is that scary dino that breaks into the kitchen. Well, they evolved, gained some feathers, and turned into various species of birds we know today. That means that any bird from chickens to those little blue ones is a direct descendant of dinosaurs. Now, does the name Spinosaurus ring a bell? You can see this huge dinosaur in some museums today. Its fossils, I mean. The Spinosaurus was one of the biggest land predators to walk Earth. Actually, to walk its land and water, since scientists believe that this dino was semi-aquatic. It fed mostly on meat, which means humans would be its natural prey if it lived today. This meat-eating dino lived around 90 to 100 million years ago. It was about 60 feet long, 12 feet high, and weighed up to 22 tons. Its head was around the size of 8 bowling balls and was shaped like a crocodile's face. Basically, the Spinosaurus was a big African elephant with the face of a crocodile. Just kidding. But that would look funny though, wouldn't it? A much more attractive dino was this guy. It's considered to be the largest dinosaur that has ever lived on our planet. What made it so big was its extremely long neck and very long tail. You wouldn't want to stand behind this creature, believe me. If it decided to swish its tail, you'd get catapulted very far away. This creature lived around 100 million years ago, and its fossils were first found in Argentina around 2012. The dino measured 120 feet from head to tail, which made it almost as big as an American football field in width. And have I mentioned it weighed almost as much as a space shuttle? A staggering 75 tons. If it had been a carnivore, it would have probably been the greatest predator. But this big guy was a peaceful herbivore that had such a long neck that it could eat leaves from high trees. Cute, right? We must also talk about the Shastasaurus. As the name suggests, this animal is popularly known as the Mount Shasta lizard. Even though it was a marine reptile and probably never set foot on the mountain itself, this dino was usually around 23 feet long, but there was a specific strand of this species that could get as big as 69 feet long, about the size of the great blue whale. This made it the biggest marine reptile to have ever lived. A fun fact about the Shastasaurus is that scientists believe it didn't even have teeth, which means it could only feed on soft-bodied prey, such as squid, for example. The next animal on our list is the blue whale. Believe it or not, the biggest living animal on Earth actually started small. These days, the average mature blue whale can reach up to 100 feet in length and weigh up to 200 tons. That's more or less the weight of 40 elephants put together, or 30 Tyrannosaurus rexes, or 2,670 average-sized people. Blue whales have to eat up to 50 million calories per day to support that body. That's the equivalent of 30,000 Big Macs, just FYI. But blue whales weren't always this big. They actually evolved from a four-legged mammal that lived on Earth around 48 million years ago. Their ancestor was called Pakicetus, and it was only 6 feet long. Here's a fun fact. To be able to live in the water as one does today, the blue whale had to go through some intense adaptations. A blue whale can replace up to 80 to 90% of oxygen in its lungs each time it takes a breath. A human replaces only up to 15% for comparison. It allows these animals to dive for up to 1 hour at a time, down to a staggering depth of 330 feet. Elephants were bound to make the list. Elephants are currently the largest land animals on Earth. They can grow to be about 13 feet tall and weigh up to 7 tons. That's pretty small if we compare it to the other animals that once lived on Earth, right? But if we placed a 6-foot-tall human next to an elephant, we'll see it's not at all that small. African elephants are bigger than their close relatives, Asian elephants, and they have a similar lifespan to humans, up to 70 years. Pokemon might have made us collectively wish that salamanders were real-life dragons, although they're not. They can still be pretty cool though. There's a giant species of salamander that is known to be the largest living amphibian. They can grow to be as long as a regular-sized human, reaching up to 6 feet. I bet that wouldn't be a pleasant underwater encounter.
Now, if Earth's history were a movie, we humans would only take up the last second of the end credits. Our planet has been around for about 4.6 billion years, but our human story began about 300,000 years ago in Africa. Now our ancestors had some wild adventures in nature. They could have run into creatures so big they'd make today's elephants look like puppies. The woolly mammoth is a pretty famous animal, sure. His cousin, though, the Columbian mammoth, not so much. This giant used to roam places from Canada all the way down to Mexico. Unlike the furrier woolly mammoths, which hung out in colder places, these animals had shorter hair, resembling huge elephants. They also had incredibly large tusks, like 12 feet worth of spiraling, sturdy tusks. And they weren't just for show, they came in handy when facing predators. That includes our ancestors. If you think about sloths these days, you're picturing these adorably slow creatures. They couldn't possibly be in your list of most dangerous animals. Well, their grandparents might have. For starters, we call them ground sloths, and they vary a lot in size. Some were as big as rhinos, and others, like the Megatherium, were as colossal as elephants. Imagine seeing a 20-foot-long sloth which doesn't mind chewing on some meat every now and then, at least in theory. Ever heard of Bigfoot? Well, our next animal kind of looks like him, but is a distant cousin to orangutans. Meet Gigantopithecus, the largest primate to ever call our planet its home. Standing tall at 10 feet and weighing more than 600 pounds, these animals were amazing to look at in real life. Unlike Bigfoot, they weren't constantly hiding. In fact, it's believed they were peaceful and gentle creatures. Sadly, they faded away about 100,000 years ago, mainly because their food sources slowly became unavailable. Those lush, fruity forests they called home eventually turned into dry grasslands. Next on our list is the cave hyena. Weighing a chunky 250 pounds and standing 3 feet tall, these beasts were as long as a grown-up lying down. What's even more interesting about these creatures is that they loved hanging out in groups. A pack could be as big as 30 of these animals, which meant they could easily take on even the biggest, heaviest mastodons. Our ancient families would have needed to stay alert around these hungry specimens. Sadly for these hyenas, about 20,000 years ago, their numbers started going down. Soon enough, they completely disappeared from the planet. Quick pop quiz. What's called a tiger but isn't really one? It's the saber-toothed tiger. I mean, sure, they belong to the feline family, but they aren't technically tigers. First appearing around 42 million years ago, in July, I think. Many of their kind were gone before we even showed up. However, early Americans might have bumped into a couple of specimens from this group. If that really happened, it would have been quite the encounter. Think of the biggest wild lion today or the hefty Siberian tiger. These big cats also had some incredible features hidden in their fur. They were good at sneaking around, hiding, and pouncing on mammoths bigger than themselves. Their bite wasn't that strong, but they could open their jaws wide, like twice as much as a lion. And although their teeth were a bit on the weak side, they had buff forearms to pin down their dinner, giving those big fangs a purpose. Not the kind of kitty you'd want to play with. Dire wolves made their debut about 250,000 years ago. They were like the gray wolves we know today, but a lot stronger. While wolves these days stretch out to about 6 feet and tip the scales at 170 pounds max, dire wolves were about 5 feet and about 150 pounds. Found all over North and South America, they had admirable jaws, biting nearly a third harder than their modern counterparts. Also, their favorite snack was horses. But just like many other majestic beasts of the past, they faded away around 10,000 years ago. Now, names can be deceiving. Take the American lion, for example. It's not really a lion, it's more of a panther's big cousin. The other part of the name is correct, though. They did live in America about 330,000 years ago. This feline was no lap cat either. They were at the top of the wildcat pyramid, weighing a colossal 772 pounds. That's like stacking 4 grown men on a scale. Even the mighty African lion would look a tad bit shy beside these beasts. With the muscle to take down a bison, you wouldn't want to accidentally interrupt their dinner. They parted ways with this planet around 11,000 years ago, right after the last ice age. Now, down in Australia, about 50,000 years ago, I wasn't around then, there lurked a relative of the Komodo dragon, the Megalania. Experts love to have debates on how big it was. Some say it stretched out to 23 feet. Others think it was just about 11 feet long. Either way, they were basically mega-sized Komodo dragons with a dangerous bite. If you think bears are already big and fluffy now, let's introduce the short-faced bear. While this big creature stood on its hind legs, it towered at 14 feet. With long limbs, they could outrun today's bears, hitting speeds up to 40 miles per hour. These ultra bears sadly disappeared around 11,600 years ago. Now imagine a crocodile. Okay, imagine that same crocodile, only supersized, with sporty legs, doing its thing in Australia about 1.6 million years ago. Well, say hello to the Quinkana. These crocs were extremely large, reaching 23 feet. And no, they weren't lazy river loungers. These creatures really love spending time on land. They evolved to have strong legs for their chases and razor-sharp teeth designed for slicing, not gripping. When did we stop sharing beaches with them? About 40,000 years ago. The name elephant bird might not sound familiar, but try to picture a bird that stood tall, as high as a basketball hoop at 10 feet, and weighed as much as a small car, 1,500 pounds. Their eggs were equally huge, like 150 chicken eggs bundled up into one. Now, as amazing as these birds sound, there's a lot we still don't know about them. They're hard to study, as most extinct animals are. Still, some recent studies have given us some clues. Scientists have been examining ancient molecules from their fossilized eggshells. It's an awesome piece of evidence, since these birdie shells were thick, preserving precious DNA inside. Plus, there are tons of these eggshell fragments sprinkled all over Madagascar's beaches. Because of these findings, we now know these birds were herbivores and loved eating leaves and seeds. We also know the tiny kiwi bird is its closest living relative. Now, dodos were these amazing birds we also used to share the planet with. They're like distant cousins to ancient pigeons. To give you some perspective, imagine a chunky bird weighing about 50 pounds. Similar to chickens, turkeys, and ostriches, dodos were also the types of birds that couldn't fly. Their wings were small, and they had the muscle strength of, well, a wet noodle. Now, you might have heard the word dodo used as a name for creatures that aren't that bright. Don't get confused, though, by this name. These birds were in fact intelligent. Scientists were able to figure that out by studying their fossils. It turns out that they were good at smelling stuff, unlike most birds that are all about the visuals. These creatures aren't around for us to study anymore, but that might change. One evolutionary biologist is on a mission to fully understand these amazing ancient birds. On that note, she revealed that the dodo's DNA has been completely sequenced. There are even talks about potentially bringing dodos back to life. They would make a nice addition to the lovely beaches of Mauritius, the place they used to call home many, many years ago.
Deep within the dense rainforests of the Democratic Republic of Congo, a mysterious creature is roaming its habitat. Its name sends shivers down the spines of locals and explorers alike. I'm talking about beely apes. These legendary giants of the jungle have become the protagonists of many tales and legends, as well as numerous speculations. Imagine a chimpanzee. Now make it bigger, almost the size of a human when standing on its two. Make it wider and stronger. It nests on the ground in trees like gorillas and feasts on fierce beasts like leopards. That's a beely ape. Through generations, locals have been whispering about beely apes to each other. There are stories of them roaming the jungles on their 2 feet, vanishing into thin air when encountered by a human but leaving massive footprints behind. People claim that they have heard the creatures howling at the moon. They also state that the beasts are immune to poisonous darts. Locals call them the ones which beat the tree, and the one which kills the lion. Local communities view them as guardians of the forest, possessing ancient wisdom passed down through the ages. About 2 decades ago, scientists and researchers got intrigued by what was going on in those rainforests and what those creatures were. A group of researchers went to study them, and here's what they found out. Remember that the locals say that beely apes avoid humans. That's true, but not exactly. Turns out that billy apes live in the part of the forest that is close to where humans live, and really prefer to avoid people. Adult males are more afraid of people than females. But as you go deeper into the forest, you see Belus that have never seen people before. Those have no fear, and they even show interest in their guests. They walk around you with curiosity, or even come face to face with you and stare at you before moving away. The apes don't show any aggression. Much like other chimpanzees, billy apes live in social groups of 10 to 100 members. Every troop has a leader, a dominant alpha male. How do they determine the leader? Usually it's just the biggest male, so it's simple here. The leader makes decisions and protects the group, but he also has the highest rank and gets priority access to everything, like food or mates. There are even more rankings. Females have their own ranks, and more dominant apes have influence over others. They really are bigger than an average chimpanzee, and early in life, they have a gray coat. Their diet is also similar to that of chimpanzees. This means that about 90% of their diet is plants and fruits, only 6% is animal products, and the remaining 4% are insects. In some instances, they act more like gorillas. For example, these fearless creatures don't only nest on trees, but on the ground as well. They make their nests themselves, moving branches and samplings into central bowls. Researchers are still baffled by this fact because the ground isn't safe, with all those leopards, lions, and buffaloes roaming around. Maybe those creatures are as fierce as the local tales say. But here's the thing. The apes that live close to humans avoid nesting on the ground and are also way quieter, trying to avoid hunters. By the way, the nests of chimpanzees are cleaner than our beds. Those guys build a new nest every single night to keep bugs and whatever else out. Their creative abilities don't end with making nests. Billy apes actively use tools too. They have been observed using sticks or branches as tools to probe termite mounds or extract honey from beehives. There are several types of tools, and all have a particular purpose. The tools used to harvest driver ants are the largest ever found in Africa. This shows that these creatures have quite impressive cognitive abilities and problem-solving skills. Also, social learning. If one chimpanzee figures something out and that works, the others will observe, learn, and adopt the same strategy. Not every animal is capable of that. So that's what we know. When the research group came back, one of the members published a report in a magazine. Their faces are much flatter than those of chimpanzees. They turn gray early in life. They have a distinct howl that gets louder during the full moon. Those must be a new species unknown to scientists, a hybrid of the gorilla and the chimpanzee. Well, that's quite a scientific discovery. The researcher gave many interviews to famous channels and magazines, but then it was discovered that the researchers had a PhD in behavioral psychology. So some experts in the field turned skeptical about her report. Belus did show some unique behavior that's not typical to chimpanzees, but that was mostly limited to nesting on the ground. So, are they a new species or not? The other members of the research group came forward after comparing Billy's DNA to the DNA of chimpanzees. They announced that the two samples of DNA were the same. They confirmed that the mysterious Billy apes were the same species as chimpanzees. Even more than that, they weren't even mutants or hybrids. Yes, they were a tiny bit bigger, and they would go gray earlier. But take humans. Some are taller, some are shorter, some are wider. Some get gray hairs earlier. And we all have different skin and hair and eye color. But just because I'm blonde and have an average height, and my neighbor is tall and has dark hair, doesn't make us different species. So, that was the argument of the other scientists from the research group. So, the whole speculation of Billy apes being a new species unknown to science was nothing. The claim that Belus howl at the moon was also debunked by another researcher from the group. The story is not new. There were other instances of such wrong calls, but there were also the opposite cases, when two species were believed to be the same but turned out to be different. For example, Sumatran orangutan and Bornean orangutan were thought to be the same species for a while. But in the late 1990s, scientists established that the two were different. Both look alike, and both have that typical shaggy reddish fur, but Sumatran orangutans have longer hair and have closer social bonds with their community. Bornean orangutans are the ones who would go down to the ground more often. Both of the species are endangered, with just a bit over 100,000 Bornean orangutans left and just 14,000 Sumatrans. As recently as 2017, a new third species of orangutan was announced, the Tapanuli orangutan. There are just about 800 of those left in the world, and it's the most endangered species of all apes. Let's throw in a couple of facts about apes. Wild chimpanzees only live in Africa, and only in 21 countries of all. That's also the homeland of humans. Yes, millions of years ago, the first humans evolved in Africa. Chimpanzees are actually humans' closest living relatives. A human and a chimpanzee share an impressive 98.8% of the DNA. Humans, chimps, and bonobos share the same ancestor from 7 million years back. That's a very distant relative, but it explains why we're so alike. Seriously, we are. Chimps can catch human diseases, and scientists believe that they can develop Alzheimer's. Also, chimps have distinctive personality types similar to humans. They display varied degrees of the 5 major personality traits: extroversion, openness, agreeableness, neuroticism, and conscientiousness. Chimpanzees are also known for fighting over territories with other groups. As I told you, they also learn from each other, not just about tools, but stuff like fashion too. In Zambia, a chimpanzee once stuck a stalk of grass behind her ear. And other female chimpanzees did the same thing after her. Also, the language. They won't be able to speak English, of course, but one chimpanzee that lives in captivity has picked up American Sign Language. Now it can do more than 350 signs to communicate with the caretakers. The chimp even passed this knowledge down to her adopted son.
What do you think is one of the most dangerous animals in the world? It's not a venomous snake or a formidable tiger, not a ferocious grizzly bear or a giant crocodile. An extremely dangerous creature that can destroy entire species of animals and can cause ecological imbalance around the world is the cane toad. It doesn't look scary and aggressive. It won't attack you or any predatory animal. It spends its time among grass and swamps, hunts insects and croaks. It has many enemies among predators, herons, lizards, and others. And look, the crocodile is swimming up to the toad and grabs it with its powerful jaws. Lunch is ready. But watch what happens next. The crocodile feels very bad. It loses its strength and lies on the grass, not breathing. Call it terminal indigestion. The fact is that the cane toad is a highly poisonous amphibian. It has parotoid glands between the shoulders from which it secretes a dangerous toxin. As soon as it gets into the stomach of any animal, it causes irreversible reactions in the whole organism. Animals that have eaten cane toads rarely survive. And now imagine there are 1 million toads like that, and each of them is an attractive lunch for predators. This creature is native to South and Central America, but became most famous after it caused an environmental disaster in Australia. It all started in 1935 when people brought cane toads to fight the cane beetle. These insects were spoiling sugarcane crops in the northern part of the country. Farmers thought the imported toads would quickly get rid of the pests, but far from getting help, Australia received even more damage. The first problem was that toads didn't hunt bugs. Well, that would have been nice to know beforehand. Insects lived on the tall stalks of reeds, and toads couldn't jump as high, so toads would feed on other insects and multiply rapidly. Initially, about 100 reed toads were brought. Farmers managed to breed more than 2,000 of these animals and release them into the fields. The amphibian population grew to 200 million in less than 85 years. They flooded Australia and caused a decrease in the population of those predatory animals that fed on them. Unfortunately, the local fauna didn't manage to develop immunity to the toad poison. The invasive toads would wander all over the northern part of the continent, spreading at a speed of 30 miles per hour and causing damage to all the biological environments they came across. Locals said they had witnessed birds falling from the sky after eating toads. These jumping animals are dangerous for those who eat and touch them. Any animal that licks or bites a toad will immediately receive a measure of poison hazardous to their health. The endurance of toads escalates the problem. They can withstand nearly any weather conditions and can breed anywhere. You can hear them croaking in tropical forests, coastal thickets, and even among dunes. They deal with cold temperatures and heat and eat everything in their path. They're not picky when it comes to food. Amphibians feed on live insects, carrion, and waste. But the most crucial problem is the speed of their reproduction. Female cane toads lay from 8 to 30,000 eggs twice a year. Within 3 days, tiny tadpoles hatch from the eggs. They swim in the water for 20 weeks, then become toads. Their life expectancy is from 5 to 10 years in the wild. Bad weather conditions, predators, drought, and anything else can't stop them. People don't know what to do with them either. The only chance to save other animals is to teach them not to eat toads. Scientists cook sausages from cane toads with a small concentration of poison inside. They gave this food to monitor lizards, freshwater crocodiles, and other predators so they could recognize the taste of the toad. Animals were slightly poisoned by the toad sausages and remember that anything with this smell was dangerous. Scientists hope they won't approach the toads after smelling them. Amphibians have destroyed most of the biodiversity in the northern part of the country, and now they're rapidly moving to Western Australia. Scientists hope their plan saves animals, but what to do next? Perhaps nature can offer a solution to the problem. Some predatory animals may become immune to toad toxins, but it's unknown when this will happen. Invasive toads are quite a severe problem for ecology, but they look harmless. And how about invasive pythons? In the Everglades in Florida, Burmese pythons threaten the local wildlife. Giant crawling monsters have become the dominant species, displacing their alligator enemies from the swamps. Pythons hunt rabbits, possums, and other animals, decreasing their population by 99%. Of course, there are not as many pythons as toads, and people can get rid of them. But the problem is that they are exceptionally good at hiding. Even professional wildlife experts can't find them in the swamps and jungles. These pythons are also excellent hunters. They hide, wait, and attack, which makes them some of the most dangerous invasive creatures in the world. But fortunately, they don't attack people. Feral hogs are some of the most aggressive invasive species on Earth. They have razor-sharp teeth and mighty tusks. They're not afraid of anything and will attack even a human. These big, fast animals eat acorns, chestnuts, turtle eggs, turkey and quail eggs, trample plants, and strike terror into all creatures in the area. They can cause $1.5 billion in damage annually in 47 states. Imported in the U.S. several centuries ago, feral hogs have recently experienced a fertility splash. Local biologists and farmers are trying to solve the problem, but at the moment, it's pretty challenging to control the feral hog population. This tiny beetle seems harmless, but can cause orange juice to disappear in the U.S. This is the Asian citrus psyllid that loves to eat orange fruit. This insect contains bacteria that infects citrus trees and slowly destroys them. After getting infected, tree roots deform, oranges fall to the ground earlier than they're supposed to, and the tree slowly loses vital energy. The Asian citrus psyllid spreads in Florida, where about 80% of the country's orange juice is produced. Also, this parasite is found in Georgia, Texas, Louisiana, and California, the states where many lemons grow. So we've seen invasive amphibians, reptiles, mammals, and insects. What about invasive birds? The European starling is a cute little bird, but it ceases to be so as soon as it joins a giant flock. Starlings gather in groups of hundreds and thousands, resembling massive black clouds. They fly to cities, villages, and harvest fields in search of food. Birds eat cattle feed and thus create a lot of problems for farmers. This invasive insect doesn't threaten other animal species, doesn't spoil crops and trees, doesn't bite, and doesn't transport any infection. But its main problem is the unpleasant smell that it emits. There are so many brown, mammated stink bugs in the U.S. that, most likely, some of them live in your house. If you've ever seen it, you probably remember that stinky smell. Thanks to this fragrance, stink bugs have almost no enemies, at least in America. But in China, their populations are controlled by wasps that use the back of bugs to lay eggs. There are no such wasps in the States, So stink bugs breed freely here. Now let's talk about one of the most invasive plants in the world. This is giant hogweed. It secretes a poison that is activated when exposed to sunlight. The toxin can burn skin and destroy trees and plants growing around giant hogweed. From the outside, it may seem like a beautiful plant. It has a tall 15-foot stem with a beautiful white flower. But this plant gets rid of other vegetation around it. Giant hogweed releases its seeds, and a light breeze spreads them for miles. When new plants grow, they destroy any other plants living nearby. The problem is that giant hogweed has no enemies. Insect pests can't eat it because of its poison. Animals also avoid it. Well, maybe nature will create some bugs that will eat its leaves and thus restore the balance.
You're on a ship when you notice some water foaming nearby. It looks as if a huge vessel just sunk there, but you don't see any debris. Steam is rising over the water, and large bubbles appear on the surface. In a couple of minutes, you see a small piece of land appear right in front of your eyes. It's releasing flames and lava. Millions of gallons of water evaporate in the mouth of the volcano. Frightened, you get away from this place. For the next 3 years, the small island covered with volcanoes will slowly be emerging from the water. Every day, it'll erupt and fill the sky with black ash. When the ash settles, it'll get mixed with the water and form the shore. This eruption lasted 3 years, and finally, by 1967, the island of Surtsey on the southern coast of Iceland was fully formed. Surtsey is one of the few islands that have emerged from the depths to the surface of the sea. But it's almost impossible to get here. The island has a unique ecological system, and scientists want to find out how it's going to develop without human influence. Only a few people from all over the world have permission to walk around on the island. For many decades, people's minds have been occupied with the mystery of Easter Island, a remote piece of volcanic soil far away in the Pacific Ocean. But our planet hosts thousands of such lonely islands. What is so peculiar about this one? The mystery is concealed not in the island itself, but giant stone statues covering it. Who created the world-famous huge stone heads? Did they serve any specific purpose? Rapa Nui, which is the name given to Easter Island by its first inhabitants, is the territory of Chile and is situated in the southern Pacific Ocean. And it is so far away that you can easily consider it one of the most distant places on the world map. The only transport that can take you there is a plane. If you want to get to this destination point, you will need to spend 5 hours on board, flying from Santiago to Easter Island. The statues carry the name Moai. They started to be carved at some point between the 13th and 15th centuries. Rapa Nui statues are easily recognized thanks to their peculiar faces. They have long noses, wide chins, rectangular ears, heavy brows, and deeply set eyes. It is quite curious that the nostrils curl in the way fish hooks do. Firstly, people thought that the statues were made up only by their heads. But surprisingly, it turned out that there are full bodies that are attached to the heads. It was discovered during excavations in May 2012. The bodies were just hidden underground. Still, the heads of the statues, visible from the first site, make up 3/8 of each statue's size. As for the arms, they were carved against the bodies, resting in different positions. Most statues, 834 out of 887, were carved from the material called tuff, which is, in fact, compressed volcanic ash. Curiously, all the statues except one faced inland. It means their backs are turned to the ocean. Perhaps the reason for that was the belief that the statues were the protectors of the villagers. That's why they overlooked the settlement. The only statues not fitting into this pattern can be found at Ahu Akivi, a sacred place for the people of Rapa Nui. People keep wondering how the statues of such a huge weight have been distributed all around the island. What's more, in 1722, visitors found a small local population between 1,500 and 3,000 people. How could it correlate with the hundreds of statues on the island? The mystery surrounding the way Rapa Nui people could move the statues challenged the researchers, not letting them back off. In the 1980s, some of them decided to recreate a statue and check the possibility of moving it around. Several decades passed, and another group of American scientists proved that the islanders could tie ropes encircling the huge statues and move them with a walking motion. They backed up their theory with practice, moving a full-size replica using this method. Actually, their idea can explain why Rapa Nui folklore states that the statues were walking with the help of magic. It explains the way the statues were transported to their designated places. Our next stop is Brazil, far from the center of Sao Paulo. That's where you can find an island that's almost impossible to get to, but if you succeed, you're unlikely to leave it. It's called Snake Island. There's no other place on the planet with such a high concentration of snakes. They are the only owners of the island, since no other animals can survive among them. The golden lancehead. They are one of the most venomous species in the world. Their venom is very powerful and fast-acting. If you let this reptile bite a raw piece of meat, the place around the bite will start to melt. Count me out. Imagine you're on this island and the snakes don't bite you. The most interesting thing you can find there is an old lighthouse. It's hidden in the dense foliage of trees. People lived on the island a long time ago. Rumor has it that the last keepers were in the lighthouse when the snakes broke in. No one has lived there ever since. How these unique snakes appeared on the island is still a mystery. The most popular legend claims that a pirate came there a long time ago. He hid a treasure somewhere on the island. Then, he left the snakes in the spot where the chest was hidden. The pirate hoped the reptiles would scare people away from his gold coins and jewelry. Since then, a few snakes have managed to increase their population thousands of times. And some of them, reportedly, are wearing jewelry. No, not really. Even if you wanted to get to the island for some reason, the patrol services would stop you. Only a few people in special protective suits can get there to conduct scientific research. Susie gets here on a small boat. As soon as she steps on the ground, she turns on the live broadcast on her phone. She records dolls hanging on trees all over the island. They have different clothes, different sizes, and faces. There are about a dozen creepy toys on every tree. Rain and hot sun deform the toys' faces. They are covered with moss and greenery and have taken eerily scary forms. There are rumors they come to life at night. Wanna check? One of the subscribers writes, "No problem," Susie agrees. The sun is going down below the horizon. Darkness falls on the forest. Susie is wandering among the trees. The moon lights her way. She makes a fire to get warm. At this moment, she hears a strange sound. She notices some movement out of the corner of her eye. The phone turns off. Susie looks up and sees one of the dolls, lit up by the flames, is turning its head in her direction. Susie screams and runs away from this place. Of course, the doll didn't move. You can notice a little bird sitting behind the toy's head. A few days later, Susie found out that one of the Mexico City locals had moved to the island in the 50s and filled it with toys. He collected dolls from landfills and canals around the island. He spent several days decorating every tree. In the beginning, it looked strange and exciting for tourists. Then, as the dolls began to age and rot, this place became more attractive for people. There are several legends about the reasons for his obsession. Okay, Susie's had enough of these mysteries and creepy places. Now she wants to admire something majestic that was created by nature. She arrives in California's Sequoia National Park, where the most giant trees in the world grow. She's looking with an open mouth at the biggest tree in the world, a giant sequoia. Its name is General Sherman, and it's about 2,000 years old. The volume of this tree is almost half the size of an Olympic swimming pool. Despite its age, it's not the oldest one. There are redwoods in the park that appeared 3,000 years ago. And the tallest tree in the world grows here, in California. It's a redwood that belongs to the sequoia family. It's called Hyperion. This is 1/3 of the Eiffel Tower's height. Just imagine what kind of view you can see from the tree's top. Now Susie is on the island of Madagascar. She's going to see unique baobab trees. They look like something has ripped them out of the ground, turned them upside down, and shoved them back in. Baobabs are some of the most beautiful trees in the world. Most of them are here in the Alley of Baobabs, but you can also find them in Australia and South Africa. Their tree trunks resemble sponges. They expand and absorb moisture during the rainy season. Elephants like to drink it. They tear off and chew the trunk's parts to quench their thirst. At night, flowers bloom on the baobabs. They smell like sour milk and attract bats. But the most interesting thing is that the baobab doesn't dry out and doesn't fall like other trees after the end of its life. It crumbles, settles, and leaves a pile of pieces on the ground.
Endless hot deserts seem lifeless at first glance. But among these sands, you can meet dangerous and sometimes creepy creatures. Some of them can only cause health problems, but some can stay in your memory forever. Let's get to know them, starting with dangerous ones and finishing with real nightmares. So, you're walking through a desert and see a big teddy bear with open hands. You understand that it's probably a mirage, but still, you come closer. You were right. It's not a plush toy, but a giant cactus. There's something strange about it. Thanks to some strange fluff, the branches resemble the arms of a teddy bear. However, this is not fluff, but thousands of thin needles, and they are the reason you shouldn't come closer. The cactus is called the jumping cholla, or teddy bear cholla. It grows in the desert areas of Arizona and in the northern part of Mexico. Don't worry, this cactus won't attack you, but it will cling to your skin or clothes if you touch it. Such a fur coat protects the cactus from animals, creates shade, and saves it from heat. The lateral branches are the most important parts of the plant as they carry out photosynthesis and accumulate a large amount of moisture inside. So, despite all the danger, the cactus can be helpful for desert wanderers. And the danger here is needles. If you look closer at them, you will see they have the shape of hooks. One touch, and hundreds of thorns are already in your finger. It's pretty difficult to get rid of them, and the needles cause unpleasant, painful sensations. But the coolest thing about this cactus is the way it reproduces. The plant clones itself in a new place. When animals and people pass the jumping cholla and touch it, the cactus gives them a small piece of itself, along with the needles. As soon as you throw this piece to the ground, it takes root and starts growing. The degree of danger is rising. The next monster from the desert is running toward us, and that is an ostrich. Many think these animals are cowards hiding their heads in the sand. You will most likely change your mind if you're unlucky enough to meet one. Usually, ostriches are not aggressive, but you should run if you come closer to their nest. On the other hand, you won't be able to do that because ostriches move at a speed of 43 miles per hour. You need a car to get away from them. They run and hit their enemy with their chests. There have been cases when ostriches attacked vans and caused significant damage to them. But the main danger these birds present is their powerful legs with sharp claws. They can deliver strong blows with them and even beat a prone opponent. So yes, if you see an ostrich in the distance, go the other way. This small spotted lizard lives underground almost all the time in the arid deserts of the southwestern US and northwestern Mexico. Sometimes, it goes outside to find lunch. It only seems cute, but in fact, it's a dangerous Gila monster. Its thick skin protects the reptile from hawks, coyotes, and other predators. But its main protection is its venom. snakes and spiders inject their toxins using long, needle-like fangs. The Gila monster clamps down and chews the prey to spread the venom. And when it bites a person, it can keep its jaws closed for a long time. Getting rid of the animal is a tricky feat. People who have experienced the effects of the venom say it feels as if hot magma passes through the veins. Despite this, the lizard turned out to be useful for science. Doctors used its venom to create medicines for diabetes and obesity. The time has come. Now you're about to meet one of the creepiest creatures living in the desert. Be quiet and listen to the silence. Stand still. There's no one around. Suddenly, you hear some hissing coming from below. You lower your head and see it. A big yellow spider the size of a human palm with strong jaws and long legs hides in the shadow of your body. In horror, you run away from this monster, but it goes after you. It isn't easy to do it in this situation, but try to calm down. The creature isn't interested in you. It wants only your shadow to hide from the scorching sun. Anyway, it's better not to touch it. The powerful jaws of the camel spider can cause unpleasant sensations, to put it mildly. And, by the way, this creature isn't really a spider. Yeah, it belongs to the class of arachnids, but it's a separate species, Salpagid. It likes to bite. It's fearless and pretty aggressive. The spider preys on insects, lizards, rodents, and small birds. It can also move at a speed of 10 miles per hour. For their small size, this is very fast. You need to be a professional athlete to run away from it. Most often, you can find camel spiders in the deserts of the Middle East, but they also live in Mexico and the southwestern US. These runners are nocturnal and try to avoid the sun during the day, so they are always hunting your shadow. By the way, they got their name because they often hide in the shadows of camels. You won't hide from them during the day, but they will also want to come after you at night, especially if you make a fire. Salpugids always run to the light in the hope of eating something. Some species of these spiders make a hissing sound to scare their enemies away. Now, let's calm down for a second and leave the hot desert. We're going into the humid tropics of Tanzania. Under tree bark, fallen leaves, and in dark caves, you can meet one of the most terrifying creatures on Earth, a tailless whip scorpion. Imagine a big scorpion without a tail, with a flat body that looks like it has been pressed by something. It's similar to spiders, but has no venom glands and can't spin a web. This monster is silent and fast, but the scariest thing is its 2 front claws, twice as long as the creature itself. Any prey it catches will never escape. Life in a dark cave has spoiled its eyesight, so the whip scorpion tries to avoid sunlight. During molting, it climbs up to the ceiling and slowly comes out of its old skin. Imagine directing your flashlight there and seeing small cocoons out of which pale spiders with excessively long legs crawl. If you really meet it, be calm and slowly go away as far as possible. Be careful. The flat scorpion can crawl under your clothes in a second and bite you in the stomach. And that's not the worst part. Okay, this is a joke. This pretty guy is one of the shyest and most harmless creatures among spiders and scorpions. It's afraid of you and will never attack. Many consider it beautiful and keep whip scorpions in glass terrariums. If you want such a pet, carefully watch it so that it doesn't run away from its house. If it happens, it will be pretty challenging to catch it again. In a matter of moments, it can get under your bed or go through gaps in the floor. Then it'll go to your neighbor's apartment through a ventilation system and scare people there. Okay, how about one more scorpion? It's not as creepy as the other creatures in this video, but it's the most venomous scorpion in the USA. This is the Arizona bark scorpion. The problem is that you can see it in the desert, in your home, or in the yard. These dangerous venomous beasts crawl into rooms and often sting people. One time is enough to cause pain, similar to a bee sting, but someone with an allergy may experience paralysis, breathing problems, and other health issues.
There are insects in nature that love to make a lot of noise. Imagine you're at a rock concert where a singer loudly yells into a microphone and the guitarists give out deafening chords, and all this is transmitted through giant speakers. It feels like the music passes through your body. You will experience a similar sensation if you find yourself near a swarm of cicadas. These creatures create a clicking, ringing sound with the help of vibrating membranes on their stomachs. The awakening of cicadas is always a surprise for people. Any day you can wake up to a loud noise outside. Cicadas gather in huge swarms, fly out into the streets, and cover cars, trees, and buildings. They chatter for weeks, and then silence comes. Cicadas disappear as suddenly as they appear. The cicada's sounds can be pleasant or harmful to your ears depending on the species. It can be something melodic and captivating. When millions of cicadas click in the forest, it resembles the sound of a jet plane or a circular saw working. Some people can't stand it and run away from the singing swarm, but many also say that cicadas make a pleasant sound that envelops you from all sides, which is a pretty unusual feeling. They make this noise to attract breeding partners or to warn their families of danger. Perhaps they are just having fun. And the reason for such joy is their life cycle. Cicadas spend several years underground and then come out to make noise for the last several weeks of their lives. And what they do under the surface is one of the most exciting mysteries for scientists. So, cicadas are physically strong insects with big eyes and unique wings. We'll talk about their uniqueness later, but now let's figure out why these insects are so awesome. There are about 3,000 species of cicadas, but they are all divided into two groups, annual and periodic ones. Annual is a common type. You can meet them all over the world. They live from 2 to 5 years or longer and have a normal insect lifestyle. They fly, drink the sap of trees, and click. But periodic cicadas live only in North America, in the central and eastern regions of the USA. They can disappear as a species off the face of the earth and then, a few years later, appear in a forest and make such noise that you can hear it from afar. Imagine walking in the woods, picking mushrooms and berries, and then the soil begins to move and hundreds of thousands of cicadas are flying out. They are everywhere, and they are very loud. But don't worry, they're not aggressive and won't bite you. The life cycle of these insects is divided into 3 parts: eggs, nymphs, and adults. At first, females lay several hundred eggs in different places. They leave their offspring near the ground on the branches of trees and brush. Then, after 6 to 10 weeks, little nymphs hatch out of them, fall to the floor, and burrow into the soil. There, they munch on fluids from the roots of plants and grow. They spend 13 or 17 years in these underground tunnels, then molt their shells and come out. And they all do it at the same time. It's as if someone gives them one order, and they drop everything to come to the surface simultaneously. And after they rise, they start to click. Imagine spending more than 10 years in a cramped, dark space, and then going out into a bright, open world where you will live for several weeks. No wonder cicadas are chirping so loudly. Or they may have a great time underground and then decide to spend their retirement outdoors. Most likely, their appearance coincides with convenient natural conditions. They wait for the soil temperature to become comfortable for reproduction and come out. However, while the soil heats up and gets colder annually, cicadas come out once every 13 or 17 years. Scientists can't give an exact explanation for this, but it may be related to other animals. Cicadas are pretty defenseless and nutritious creatures. A swarm of millions of cicadas is a feast for many forest inhabitants. Owls and foxes like to eat them. Suppose the forest ecosystem gets used to the annual singing of cicadas. In that case, their enemies will quickly destroy the entire population of these insects. Therefore, cicadas come out when no one expects them. Perhaps they choose the moment when the population growth of owls and foxes is at the lowest level. To avoid meeting them, Cicadas wait for several years. This version looks logical, but something doesn't work in it. If cicadas fight for survival in such a way, then why don't all species do it? Annual cicadas regularly appear in the forest and are an integral part of the ecosystem. They continue to exist despite the presence of many enemies. Why do periodic ones decide to hide? This is still unknown. A massive swarm of cicadas resembles locusts. So many consider them pests. But unlike these crop eaters, cicadas only feed on the sap of trees. They won't eat your corn, destroy your garden, and bite the leaves. Cicadas drink juice from branches and roots, and they do it quite rarely. Yes, 1 million cicadas can damage trees because of their relative weight, but the damage they cause to people is not comparable to what locusts do. Besides, cicadas will rarely bother you. You can finish university and change several jobs, and the cicadas would come out only once during this time, and they also look pretty cute for insects. Their wings have beautiful patterns, and their eyes are so huge. However, they can still terrify you, especially if you meet a swarm of cicadas on your way. Life underground seems safe, but even there, the cicadas have their antagonists. And the main one is a special kind of parasitic fungi that can penetrate the body of a cicada and slowly devour it. The fungus takes control of the body and turns the host into a living zombie. These parasites have also learned to change their life cycle, following the life cycle of cicadas. That is, the fungus remains in the body of an insect for a long time and does nothing. And then, when the cicada comes to the surface, the parasite wakes up and begins to spoil its life. It feeds on the host's body and forces it to spread the fungus spores throughout the swarm to infect future generations. Another type of fungus doesn't wait for the cicadas to crawl to the surface. These parasites can cause infected insects to get out of the ground ahead of time, crawl up tree branches and scatter spores. Sometimes fungi grow out of cicadas while they are still underground. It seems that cicadas won't survive with such dangerous enemies, but nature has found a balance. Some types of fungi don't destroy their carriers. They live in symbiosis with cicadas. The parasite gets a home, and the cicada probably gets nutrients from the fungus. For scientists, this is a unique case when fungi abandon their parasitic lifestyle. With each emergence to the surface, the cicadas become bigger in size. This happens because large cities emit a lot of heat and nutrients into the air, warming the area by several degrees. This contributes to an increase in cicadas' size. But the growth only applies to those insects that live near cities. Cicadas hiding in rural areas with colder temperatures retain the same size. The uniqueness of cicadas is not only in their life development, but also in their anatomy. When insects become adults, their wings get covered with tiny nanopillars that can repel water, destroy bacteria, and self-clean. Doctors, chemists, and engineers want to use the properties of cicada wings to develop new technologies in different fields. A coating with the cicada's nanopillars can help people create new medicines. Engineers want to use self-cleaning surfaces of the wings without glare as coatings for solar panels and other high-tech developments. So, yeah, cicadas actually help us a lot. Let's find out something awesome about poisons. No, this is not another video with the top 10 of the most venomous animals. There will be several of them here, but the point is different. We're going to find out about the nature of these substances, which are dangerous for any living creature. There are two glasses in front of you. The first one is full of sour milk, and the other has the venom of one of the most dangerous snakes in the world, Vipera aspis. What do you think? The liquid from which glass can cause negative consequences for your health? The correct answer is sour milk. It can cause bloating, indigestion, and heartburn. But if you drink the snake's venom, nothing will happen. The fact is that this substance is a particular type of protein, and gastric juice splits this protein like any other food. The toxin contained in the poison is dangerous only in contact with blood. Therefore, if you have a wound in your mouth or stomach, then you'll have problems. But as long as the toxin stays away from the blood circulatory system, you needn't worry. However, it doesn't always work like that. Some animals secrete a poison that penetrates your body at the slightest physical contact. But venomous beasts have to deliver this dangerous substance inside your blood. And by the way, this is the difference between poisonous and venomous. In the first case, these are animals that can poison you passively. For example, if you touch them. They don't make any effort, and the poison is released from their bodies constantly. The poison dart frog just hangs out in the jungles of South America and doesn't attack anyone. But everyone is afraid to touch it because its skin secretes one of the most dangerous poisons on Earth. The toxin particles contained in the poison of these animals are so tiny that they easily get through the pores of your skin and cause an intense reaction in your body. But venomous animals have bigger toxin particles that can get inside your body only through injection. Venomous animals bite and sting to deliver the venom to blood. Venomous snakes, wasps, spiders, and other creatures use venom to attack prey. Poisonous frogs or fish covered with poisonous skin use toxins to defend themselves. That's the difference. One of the most venomous creatures in the world is the box jellyfish. When it stings, it injects a powerful toxin into its enemy, affecting the nervous system and skin cells. They are dangerous not only for sea creatures, but also for people. The toxin acts quickly and can lead to serious health problems within minutes. One of the most poisonous creatures in the world besides the poison dart frog is the puffer fish. Yeah, that famous Japanese delicacy. Many have probably heard that if the cook prepares this fish incorrectly, it can be poisonous even after heat treatment. This fish's toxin is 1,000 times more potent than cyanide. The amount of poison inside one puffer fish contains enough toxin to seriously harm several dozen people. When the fish feels danger, it swallows a lot of air along with water and increases in size. In this state, its needles, which contain the toxin, become even more dangerous. So never touch this fish if you see it in the sea. There's the third type of use of venom. It's called intraspecific competition. You can find it in venomous mammals such as the Australian platypus. There are tiny needles on their palms that secrete toxins. A platypus can paralyze an opponent with a kick. But these animals also use poison during mating competitions. Their bodies enhance the properties of the toxins to defeat competitors during the fight for a female. Two males struggle to weaken each other. The male whose poison is more effective wins the battle. Some animals have to bite and sting to use venom, while others just wait for someone else's touch. But what about this little creature that releases its poison like a dart? Meet the cone snail. It hides inside its home and waits for a little fish to swim closer. Then it releases a toxic harpoon from its proboscis and paralyzes the fish. Then the snail swallows the prey whole, like an anaconda. The venom of this small animal is also dangerous for humans as it causes severe problems with breathing, vision, and other issues. At the same time, the substance contained in the poison of the cone snail is used by doctors to make a powerful analgesic. And this is not the only case when animal venom is used in medicine. A poisonous lizard called the Gila monster releases a neurotoxin produced in the salivary gland during a bite. Because of this venom, the bite of this animal is considered one of the most painful in the world. People who were attacked by the Gila monster said that they had experienced a feeling as if hot lava was flowing through their veins. However, such a terrible poison can be useful for humans. Scientists have discovered a hormone in it that can effectively treat diabetes. Some poisons cause muscle paralysis, others can create breathing problems, and others raise blood pressure. But why are they all different? Well, all these differences depend on the prey that venomous animals hunt. For example, most vipers prey on small mammals with a fast metabolism. Therefore, reptiles have developed venom that disrupts blood clotting, resulting in a fast-running hare quickly losing control of its body. However, for cold-blooded animals, such a stratagem would be less effective. That's why some types of cobras produce neurotoxic venom that can stop the transmission inside the nervous system. Such a substance effectively strikes the organisms of cold-blooded creatures. All this suggests that venomous and poisonous creatures adapt their toxins depending on their habitat. That's why venoms of the same species can differ so much. If a viper bit you in one region of a large country, an antidote from another region might not help you. In places with more complex conditions for survival, snakes can develop more dangerous venom to repel enemy attacks or catch fast prey. But this principle also works the other way around. Put a group of snakes in an environment where they can easily catch food and don't have to defend themselves from other animals. This type of snake may eventually become non-venomous. This is because producing venom is a complicated process that requires a lot of energy and resources from the organism. And if the conditions don't require using this substance, then snakes will stop producing it. This happened with sea snakes. They are some of the most venomous animals on Earth that hunt fish at the bottom of the sea. Since their prey was much faster than them, they had to develop a strong venom that would quickly paralyze fish. But one of sea snake species stopped getting food this way. Instead of hunting fish, they began to eat fish eggs. This prey doesn't run away, so snakes don't need venom anymore. Eventually, they stopped producing it. How many animals on the planet do you think are poisonous and venomous? According to scientists' calculations, about 15 to 20%. But most likely, this number is much higher because people haven't fully studied all the biodiversity of such creatures. Interestingly, almost every species of animal has a poisonous or venomous kind. Even among mammals, the platypus is not the only venomous creature. The slow loris seems like a cute, harmless animal. Still, this primate from Southeast Asia secretes venom from its teeth during a bite. Also, some species of shrews produce venom in the same way to paralyze their prey, and vampire bats are the only poisonous flying mammals in the whole world. Okay, we have a large number of poisonous and venomous animals today, but what about the past? Many scientists believe that millions of years ago, venomous dinosaurs walked the Earth. Some studies have confirmed this hypothesis. The venomous glands and tissues of these formidable reptiles haven't survived to our times. But in the teeth of some dinosaurs, scientists found small gaps that modern venomous snakes and lizards have. It's possible that prehistoric monsters also used these holes to secrete venom through them.
Orcas are considered some of the mightiest predators on Earth. One look at their elegant black and white appearance, and you'll immediately recognize them. These marine mammals are not just strong, they're also super smart and social. They have an incredible knack for communicating with each other through a wide range of noises. What's fascinating is that each orca pod has its own unique sounds that its members can recognize even from a distance. It's like they have their very own secret language. When it comes to hunting, orcas are highly skilled. While they prefer chilly coastal waters, you can find them all around the globe, from the polar regions to the equator. As the kings and queens of the food chain, orcas have a diverse palate. They enjoy feasting on fish, penguins, and other marine mammals like seals, sea lions, and even whales. They've got some serious teeth too, measuring up to 4 inches long. Now here's something really neat about orcas. They're expert hunters, and they do it in groups called pods. A pod can consist of up to 40 orcas, forming a very effective hunting team. Interestingly, there are distinct types of pods: resident and transient. Resident pods are more into fish, while transient pods have a taste for marine mammals. But no matter what type of pod they belong to, all orcas have one thing in common: they are master collaborators. They work together using smart hunting techniques that are often compared to the teamwork of wolf packs. When it comes to family matters, orcas take their roles seriously. Mothers are incredibly protective of their little ones, and often other adolescent females pitch in to help with the care. Mothers give birth every few years after a really long 17-month pregnancy. They usually have just one baby at a time. Eventually, as they grow up, they'll become more independent and venture out on their own. However, in some cases, the young orca may choose to stick with the pod it was born into for life. In the wild, orcas lived in tight-knit family groups, forming strong bonds and sharing a unique culture that is passed down from generation to generation. Research has shown that their social structure is decidedly sophisticated. Despite their beauty and intelligence, orcas are causing somewhat of a stir among sailors. Unbelievably, they have actually sunken boats. What's even more interesting, in a dangerous kind of way, is that they seem to be teaching their friends to do the same. According to experts, it all started with one upset orca. This poor soul experienced what they call a critical moment, and it triggered a whole new behavior. And now, this behavior is expanding among the orca population through social learning. Let's dive into the details. The latest incident occurred off the coast of Spain in the Straits of Gibraltar. A yacht had an unfortunate encounter with 3 orcas. The skipper of this vessel described how the little orcas shook the rudder while the big one repeatedly rammed the ship with all its might. The astonishing part is that the smaller orcas actually imitated the techniques of the larger one. With a slight run-up, they too slammed into the boat. It's like they were training with the master. But that's not all. Just 2 days before this incident, a group of 6 orcas ran into another sailboat in the same area. One of the orcas, a mother, seemed to be teaching her calf how to charge into the rudder. Now, you might be wondering why these boat-sinking shenanigans are happening more frequently. It turns out that reports of aggressive orca encounters off the Iberian coast have been popping up since 2020. And according to a study published last year, the attacks follow a pattern. The orcas approach the boat from the stern, strike the rudder, and then lose interest once the boat comes to a halt. There's some good news, though. Despite the increasing number of interactions between orcas and boats, most of them have been harmless. In fact, out of over 500 recorded interactions, only 3 boats have been sunk. So, the chances of your boat meeting its watery end at the hands or teeth of an orca are pretty slim. Let's trace the origin of this whole phenomenon. Experts believe that it all started with an orca called White Gladys. Poor White Gladys must have had a seriously rough time, maybe a collision with a boat or getting tangled up in some fishing gear. This traumatic event somehow flipped a switch in her behavior, and she began the whole physical contact with the boats thing. Remember when I said orcas are extremely social creatures? They are quick learners and great imitators. So once White Gladys started her boat bumping thing, the rest of the orcas caught on. And just like that, the behavior spread among the orca population. You might be wondering why orcas would even bother with this risky behavior. Well, the experts think that the orcas perceive it as advantageous despite the potential danger of crashing into moving boats. It could be that they find it absolutely thrilling, or maybe even a bit of a game. Orcas are incredibly curious and playful creatures, after all. Another theory is that this behavior might not be as aggressive as it seems. Some researchers believe it could be more of a playful fad among these creatures. You know, like when a few friends start doing something cool and then everybody wants to join in on the fun. Maybe it's their way of entertaining themselves and breaking the monotony of ocean life. However, as the number of incidents continues to rise, concerns are growing, and not just for the sailors out there. The Iberian orca subpopulation is already critically endangered, and this boat-bopping trend could pose a severe issue for them. According to the latest census, there are less than 40 Iberian orcas left in the wild. That's a dangerously small number. So if these boat encounters persist or become more intense, it could seriously jeopardize the safety of both sailors and the orcas themselves. However, it may just be the boats they don't like. That's because orcas have never attacked humans in the wild. They have even been known to approach and play with humans. Orcas are incredibly curious creatures and seem to enjoy interacting with us. They've been seen swimming alongside humans, bringing them toys, and even chasing boats in their way. Some individual orcas have even developed friendships with specific humans over time. Here's one fascinating incident that occurred in a coastal Alaskan village. A group of children were having a snowball fight when a pod of orcas decided to join in the fun. They broke off a piece of drift ice and began tossing it around in the air, much to the delight and amusement of the children. Now, you might wonder if orcas have ever saved humans from dangerous situations. While there are very few recorded cases of orcas rescuing unfamiliar humans, there have been instances where they have come to the aid of humans they know. It's worth mentioning a remarkable occurrence that took place in Eden, Australia. A group of whalers found themselves in grave danger after their boat capsized, leaving them at the mercy of shark-infested waters. Incredibly, a pod of orcas, led by a male known as Old Tom, shielded the whalers from the sharks and kept them afloat until they were rescued. This demonstrates the protective nature of orcas even towards humans. There are several theories as to why orcas do not attack humans. One possibility is that they recognize that we are not their natural prey. These creatures prefer to feast on particularly nutritious and fatty foods, like sea lions or salmon, whereas humans simply don't provide the same nutritional value. But is this the only reason? Other apex predators, like sharks, may occasionally mistake humans for seals and attack them. However, in the rare cases where orcas have mistaken humans for prey during a hunt, they immediately stop the chase once they realize their mistake without causing any harm. Experts believe this is due to the high intelligence and empathy of orcas.